Hey guys, tonight we're stepping through the gates of a medieval city to investigate the people performing the jobs nobody else wanted. Not the glamorous jobs. You will not be polishing a knight's helmet, advising the king, or sitting beside a stained glass window copying poetry while sunlight gently illuminates your cheekbones. No. You'll be scraping hair from animal skins, carrying barrels of human waste through dark alleys, and trying to decide whether the object floating beside your boot is a cabbage leaf or part of a goat. So before your employment situation deteriorates completely, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. And leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Somehow, half of you are always listening at 2 in the morning, apparently because sleep has become another unpaid medieval occupation. Now dim the lights, switch on a fan for some soft white noise, and get comfortable. Pull the blankets over your feet so no imaginary sewer rat mistakes your toes for a seasonal delicacy. Relax your shoulders, let your breathing slow down, and appreciate just for a moment that nobody is about to hand you a wooden bucket and point silently toward a flooded cesspit. Because tonight you're going to work. Have you ever wondered what happened to all the waste produced by thousands of people living behind city walls without flush toilets? Who climbed into the pits beneath the privies when they became full? Who removed dead horses from the streets after everyone else had politely walked around them for 3 days? How many buckets of stale urine could you stand in before beginning to reconsider your career goals? What did a medieval butcher do with the parts of an animal that nobody wanted to buy? Why did tanners work in places where even the flies appeared emotionally exhausted? Could you spend 12 hours beside a furnace without air conditioning, safety glasses, or a cheerful poster reminding you to stay hydrated? And how badly would you need money before agreeing to become the executioner's assistant? Would you survive a morning carrying sacks of grain heavier than a modern refrigerator? Could you wash blood-stained linen in an icy river without immediately handing in your resignation? Would you trust a barber who offered you a haircut, a tooth extraction, and emergency surgery during the same appointment? These were real occupations performed by real people who kept medieval cities alive, clean enough to function, and only occasionally on fire. Their reward was usually low pay, physical pain, public suspicion, and the exciting possibility of developing a rash that local medicine would treat with prayer and another rash. And now, congratulations. You've just woken up in the year 1375 inside a crowded English city. The morning bells have not rung yet. The streets are dark, the air smells complicated, and someone is hammering on your door. Your new employer is outside. He has brought you a bucket. One before sunrise, the bell ringer who wakes everyone except himself. Let's begin before sunrise, because medieval employment has never respected your sleep schedule. You wake in a narrow room beside the church, wrapped in a wool blanket that feels as though it was woven from old rope and personal resentment. The air is cold enough to make breathing seem unnecessarily ambitious. Somewhere nearby, a mouse is chewing with the confidence of a tenant who pays more rent than you do. Outside, the city is still dark. The shutters are closed. Cooking fires have burned low. Even the dogs have stopped arguing. For one peaceful moment, thousands of people are asleep behind timber walls, dreaming of warm bread, unpaid debts, or perhaps a cow that has learned to speak Latin. Then you remember your job. You are the bell ringer. This means you are responsible for informing the entire city that morning has arrived, even though morning has made no visible effort to prove it. You pull on stiff shoes, wrap a cloak around your shoulders, and step into the church. The stone floor steals heat through the soles of your feet. The building smells of wax, dust, damp masonry, and last evening's incense. It is silent in the way only a large empty church can be silent, as if the saints themselves are sleeping and would prefer not to be disturbed. Unfortunately for them, you have a schedule. The bell regulates much of medieval urban life. It may call people to prayer, announce the opening of markets, warn of danger, signal curfews, mark important events, and remind everyone that time is passing even though hardly anyone owns a clock. Today, your first duty is to ring for morning prayers. To reach the bell, you begin climbing the tower staircase. The steps are narrow and uneven, spiraling upward through cold darkness. You hold a small lamp in one hand and grip the wall with the other. Every few steps, your knee complains. By the 20th step, your back has joined the discussion. By the 50th, you begin wondering whether God could not hear prayers offered from ground level. The staircase continues. There is no lift, no handrail designed by a safety committee, and no glowing emergency sign. There is only stone, darkness, and the faint smell of pigeons. At last, you reach the bell chamber. The bell hangs above you, enormous and black in the dim light. It weighs more than several cows and appears less friendly than any of them. A thick rope drops from the mechanism, its fibers rough against your palms. You brace your feet and pull. At first, nothing happens. You pull harder. The rope tightens. The great bell begins to move slowly, reluctantly, like an elderly nobleman being asked to leave a banquet. Then the clapper strikes. The sound does not merely enter your ears. It enters your chest, your teeth, and several organs you were not aware could hear. The entire tower vibrates. Dust falls from the beams. Pigeons explode into flight above you, furious that nobody consulted them. You pull again. The bell swings wider. Across the city, people wake. A baker opens his eyes beside a cooling oven. A guard shifts at the gate. A merchant curses softly beneath his blankets. Somewhere, a baby begins crying, possibly because it has already understood the economic system. You continue ringing. The sound rolls across rooftops, through alleys, over the walls, and into the surrounding fields. It tells priests to prepare, servants to rise, apprentices to dress, and laborers to begin another long day of lifting objects for people who own better shoes. Your arms burn. Your palms sting. The rope pulls upward with enough force to remind you that a bell can, in theory, launch an inattentive man into the rafters. There are stories of ringers being injured by ropes, falling machinery, or bells that cracked and failed. You try not to think about those stories while standing directly beneath several tons of suspended bronze. Eventually, the final note fades. The city is awake. You stand in the tower, breathing heavily, ears ringing, hands sore, and morning not yet properly visible through the narrow window. Below, thousands of people begin their work because of you. None of them will thank you. Most of them actively dislike you. Still, you have performed an essential public service. You have ruined everyone's sleep at exactly the correct time. Now you climb back down, step by careful step, while the first gray light enters the streets. And waiting below, in a warm stable full of impatient horses, is your next opportunity for personal growth. To the stable boy, starting the day at the horse end. At the bottom of the tower, the city is beginning to stir, and so are the horses. You hear them before you reach the stable, hooves striking boards, chains rattling, breath blowing sharply through large, impatient nostrils. One animal lets out a long, dramatic snort, as though it has been awake all night reviewing your performance and has several concerns. You push open the stable door. Warm, damp air rolls toward you. It carries the smell of hay, leather, sweat, mud, and enough horse manure to make the church incense seem like a distant luxury. The stable is warmer than the tower, which is pleasant for approximately 3 seconds, until your eyes adjust and you see the floor. The horses have been busy. Medieval cities depend heavily on animal power. Horses and ponies carry riders, pull carts, haul goods, move messages, and transport anyone wealthy enough to avoid walking through the street muck. Oxen and donkeys may also be used, but here in the stable, horses are the expensive engines of urban life. And you are their mechanic, cleaner, waiter, and emotional support employee. You begin with feed. Oats are valuable, so you measure them carefully. Give too much, and the stable master accuses you of wasting money. Give too little, and the horse begins dismantling the stall with its teeth. Hay must be shaken out and checked for damp or mold. Water must be carried in heavy buckets from the well or trough. Naturally, the horse drinks most enthusiastically after you have filled the bucket to the brim and carried it across the yard without spilling a drop. It lowers its head, takes 3 gulps, then sneezes directly into your face. Good morning. Next comes grooming. You brush dried mud from the animal's coat, working around the shoulders and flanks while keeping one eye on the hind legs. A horse can kick with astonishing speed, and medieval workplace regulations consist mainly of older workers telling you not to stand there. You move carefully. The animal shifts its weight. You freeze. It turns its head and looks at you with the calm expression of a creature that could crush your foot accidentally and feel no need to discuss it afterward. You continue brushing. Grooming is not simply about appearance. Dirt trapped beneath harnesses can rub the skin raw. Hooves must be checked for stones, cracks, or injury. Tack must be cleaned and inspected, because a broken strap on a crowded road can transform a routine delivery into a civic event. The leather harness is stiff with sweat and road dust. You wipe it down, examine the buckles, and rub grease into the driest parts. The stable master checks your work by pulling sharply at every strap, apparently hopping to discover failure while you are still standing nearby. Then comes the floor. You take up a wooden fork and shovel. The bedding is a mixture of straw, urine, dung, and whatever optimism you brought into the building. You remove the wettest material and pile it into a barrow. Manure is not necessarily useless. It can be taken outside the city and used as fertilizer, sold to gardeners, or added to the general mountain of organic material that medieval people somehow managed to turn into either food or a public health problem. The wheelbarrow is heavy. Its wheel is uneven. The yard is muddy. You push it toward the dung heap while trying not to tip the entire load over your shoes. A cart rolls past the stable entrance, splashing brown water across your legs. The driver raises one hand in apology but does not slow down, which is the medieval equivalent of sending a sympathetic message after ruining your morning. Back inside, one horse needs to be saddled for a merchant. Another must be harnessed to a delivery cart. You lift the saddle, which is heavier than it looks, and settle it across the animal's back. The horse immediately expands its stomach while you tighten the girth, a trick horses have apparently been performing since the beginning of organized employment. You tighten it again. The merchant arrives wearing a clean cloak. He complains that the horse is not ready. You consider explaining that it has been fed, watered, groomed, inspected, saddled, and persuaded not to murder anyone before sunrise. Instead, you lower your head and say nothing. The merchant mounts and rides away without looking at you. Hooves strike the street, carrying him toward a day of buying, selling, and sitting down. You return to the stable. Another stall needs cleaning. Another bucket needs filling. Another horse has managed to step directly into the one place you just swept. Still, the city is moving now. Carts rumble through the gates. Traders lead pack animals toward the market. Messengers hurry along the road. All of it depends on strong animals and invisible workers like you. Your reward is a sore back, wet boots, and a piece of straw inside your shirt that cannot be found but can certainly be felt. And just as you finish the final stall, a man appears at the stable entrance holding a lantern, a rope, and a bucket with a lid. He says the privy pit behind the inn is full. Apparently, your morning is about to become more intimate. 3. The privy cleaner, descending into other people's decisions. The man with the lantern leads you behind the inn, where the morning air becomes noticeably less ambitious. A narrow passage runs between two timber buildings. The walls lean toward each other overhead, almost touching, as though trying to avoid looking down. Beneath your boots, the ground is slick with mud, ash, spilled ale, and several substances that no responsible narrator should identify before breakfast. At the end of the passage stands a wooden privy. The structure hangs partly over a stone-lined pit beneath the yard. Guests have been using it for months, possibly years, with the carefree confidence of people who believe unpleasant things disappear once they fall through a hole. They do not. They wait for you. The innkeeper lifts the lid covering the access point. A warm breath rises from below. It smells like an argument between a dead goat, a blocked drain, and every bad decision made in the building since last winter. You step backward. The innkeeper steps forward and hands you the bucket. This is not a misunderstanding. You are here to empty the cesspit. Workers who clean privies and cesspits perform one of the most necessary and despised jobs in the medieval city. In later English records, some are known as gong farmers, with gong referring to privy filth rather than a large musical instrument. Sadly, there is no musical instrument. There is only the pit. Because the smell is unbearable and the work disturbs nearby residents, cesspit cleaning may be done at night or very early in the morning. The waste must be dug or scooped out, raised in containers, loaded onto carts, and carried beyond the busiest parts of the city. You tie a cloth around your nose. It achieves nothing. Your partner secures a rope around your waist and lowers a ladder into the opening. The ladder disappears into darkness after only a few rungs. You light a small candle. The flame flickers. This is not reassuring. Enclosed pits can contain dangerous gases, although nobody around you has the scientific language to explain why a person might become dizzy, collapse, or die while working below. The practical advice is simpler. Keep the opening uncovered, work quickly, and try not to breathe too enthusiastically. You place one foot on the ladder, then another. The smell thickens as you descend. It coats the inside of your mouth. It settles in your hair. You are fairly certain it has entered your memories. At the bottom, your boots sink. There is a soft noise beneath them. You decide not to investigate. Your candle reveals layers of compacted waste mixed with straw, food scraps, broken pottery, bones, cloth, and household rubbish. People have thrown objects into the privy because retrieving them would require meeting someone like you. You begin filling the bucket. The shovel cuts into the heavy material with a wet resistance. Each load must be lifted, tipped, and packed carefully. When the bucket is full, you call upward. Your partner hauls it out. A moment later, the empty bucket returns. Then again, and again. The rhythm becomes mechanical. Scoop, lift, tip, call, wait. Medieval cities generate waste constantly, and although authorities may issue rules about where rubbish can be dumped, enforcement is inconsistent. Some householders maintain private pits. Others use shared privies, public latrines, drains, rivers, ditches, or whatever location seems farthest from their own front door. You find a shoe. Only one. It is too small for you and too soaked for any future use. You toss it into the waste bucket, where it joins a chicken bone, several nutshells, and what appears to be part of a wooden spoon. Above, the innkeeper asks whether you are nearly finished. You look around the pit. You tell him no. He sighs as though your lack of speed is the real unpleasantness here. Hours pass slowly beneath the yard. Your shoulders ache from shoveling. Your legs tremble from standing in unstable filth. The candle burns low, forcing you to work by the pale daylight entering through the opening above. At last, the bottom of the pit becomes visible. You climb the ladder, rung by slippery rung. Your partner grabs your arm and pulls you into the yard. Fresh air reaches your face, although fresh is a generous description for air behind a medieval inn. The waste has been loaded into barrels on a cart. It may be taken outside the walls and deposited in designated pits or sold for use as fertilizer, depending on local practice and how optimistic the buyer feels. The innkeeper counts a few coins into your palm. He complains about the price. You stare at him silently. He adds another coin. For the rest of the day, people will recognize your occupation before they see you. Dogs will follow. Children will point. Tavern customers will suddenly discover empty seats elsewhere. Still, the privy is usable again. The inn remains open. The guests can continue eating, drinking, and dropping things through the floor without giving the matter another thought. You have saved the building from overflowing. And as you guide the loaded cart into the street, you discover that the street itself is covered in a thick layer of manure, rubbish, and morning mud. A man nearby hands you a rake. Apparently, the city has noticed you are already dirty. For the street raker, cleaning a road that fights back. Apparently, the city has noticed you are already dirty. The man holding the rake is a municipal official, or perhaps merely someone with a hat confident enough to suggest authority. He points toward the street, where the morning traffic has begun churning everything beneath it into a thick brown mixture. You look at the rake. You look at the street. The street appears to look back. Medieval urban roads are not automatically paved, drained, and cleaned by an invisible department that arrives while everyone is sleeping. Some important streets may be surfaced with stone, gravel, timber, or packed material, but many lanes remain muddy, uneven, and vulnerable to every wheel, hoof, rainstorm, and careless household nearby. Today, they are vulnerable to you. You take the rake and step into the road. Your boots sink immediately. The mud reaches above the soles and grips them with the determination of a landlord collecting overdue rent. Mixed into it are horse dung, straw, ash, broken rushes, vegetable leaves, animal bones, spilled grain, feathers, scraps of leather, and the remains of something that may once have been a hat. You pull the rake through it. The mixture moves several inches. This feels less like cleaning and more like rearranging a swamp. Street cleaners, rakers, scavengers, and hired laborers are needed because medieval cities produce astonishing amounts of refuse. Horses leave manure wherever horses feel inspired. Market traders discard spoiled goods. Workshops produce offcuts, ashes, blood, hair, and broken materials. Households sweep rubbish outside, usually with the comforting belief that outside is a complete waste management strategy. Local authorities may create rules against dumping filth in certain places. Residents may be ordered to clean the space in front of their own homes. Fines may be issued. Naturally, this solves everything. A woman opens an upper window. You hear a warning shout. You jump backward as a basin of dirty water falls into the street, splashing exactly where you had been standing. The woman leans out and tells you she warned you. You thank her for the generous half-second. You continue raking. Your task is to gather the worst material into piles so it can be loaded onto carts and carried away. Some waste may be useful. Manure can fertilize fields. Ash has practical uses. Bones, cloth, metal, and leather scraps may be collected by people who can sell or reuse them. Other items have completed their journey through the economy. You hook the rake beneath a dead chicken. It lifts briefly, then separates into two different administrative problems. A passing dog steals one of them. You let it. The street is growing busier. Apprentices hurry toward workshops. Merchants open shutters over their stalls. Servants carry baskets. Carts roll through the narrow lane, their wheels cutting deep channels into the wet ground. Each time you form a neat pile, a cart drives through it. The wheel spreads the rubbish across the road again in a wide, elegant arc. The driver tells you to move faster. You consider placing the dead chicken in his cart. Instead, you step aside. Rainwater and household runoff are supposed to move through gutters or channels along the street, but these frequently become blocked with refuse. You kneel beside one and push the rake beneath a compacted wall of straw, dung, and vegetable matter. Nothing happens. You push harder. The blockage suddenly breaks. A dark stream rushes forward, carrying half the street with it and splashing over your knees. The water travels downhill toward another neighborhood, where it becomes somebody else's exciting morning discovery. This is considered drainage. By midday, your shoulders are aching. Every pull of the rake sends pain through your arms. Your hands have begun to blister beneath the dirt. The smell is no longer one smell but a collection. Sour ale near the tavern, rotting greens beside the market, smoke near the workshops, blood near the butchers, and the broad, dependable foundation of horse manure beneath everything. A shopkeeper comes outside and complains that your rubbish pile is blocking his doorway. You explain that much of it came from his doorway. He explains that this is irrelevant. You move the pile. A nobleman's servant approaches on horseback. You press yourself against a wall to let him pass. The horse steps directly into a puddle and sends a sheet of brown water across your chest. The servant does not notice. The horse does. It appears pleased. Still slowly, the street begins to improve. The largest heaps are loaded onto a cart. The gutter flows again. The entrance to the market becomes passable without requiring a boat or a final letter to one's family. For a brief moment, you can see the surface beneath the dirt. Then a herd of pigs is driven around the corner. They scatter across the lane, snuffling through the remaining refuse with great enthusiasm. One knocks over a basket. Another relieves itself beside your freshly cleared gutter. A third takes a personal interest in your rake. You stand silently while the entire morning's work begins rebuilding itself. This is the tragedy of street cleaning. The city never stops using the street while you are trying to clean it. But your work matters. Without people clearing refuse, opening gutters, and carrying waste away, roads become blocked, standing water gathers, smells intensify, and movement through the city becomes even more difficult than usual. Nobody celebrates this. Nobody builds a statue of you. They simply notice when you stop. You lean on the rake and wipe your forehead with the least dirty part of your sleeve. From farther down the road comes the sound of animals crying, cleavers striking wooden blocks, and market sellers announcing fresh meat. A butcher's apprentice waves at you. He is standing in a doorway surrounded by blood, hides, and several large buckets. He says he needs help. For reasons that will soon become clear, the street was only preparing you. 5. The butcher's apprentice, breakfast in the shambles. For reasons that will soon become clear, the street was only preparing you. You follow the butcher's apprentice through a narrow lane lined with open-fronted shops. Wooden signs creak overhead. Hooks hang from beams. Dogs gather beneath the stalls with the patient concentration of investors waiting for a market correction. This district is known for meat. You could have guessed. The smell reaches you first. Blood, wet wool, smoke, dung, hot fat, old straw, and the metallic sharpness of freshly cut flesh. It is not one unpleasant smell. It is several unpleasant smells cooperating efficiently. The butcher hands you an apron. It was probably pale once. You tie it around your waist and immediately realize that medieval butchery is not the clean, refrigerated, stainless steel experience modern shoppers have been carefully trained to imagine. There are no sealed packages, no printed labels, and no cheerful photograph of a farmhouse where the animal apparently spent its life receiving massages. The animal is here. It is looking at you. A sheep stands in the yard behind the shop, tied to a post and expressing reasonable doubts about the morning. Other animals wait nearby. Livestock may be driven through city streets to markets and slaughtering places, creating noise, congestion, manure, and occasional panic when an ox decides to explore retail opportunities. Your master places a rope in your hand. You are told to hold the sheep steady. This is difficult because the sheep has suddenly developed clear long-term goals. It pulls backward. You pull forward. For several seconds, the two of you engage in a negotiation between species. The sheep has more legs. You have employment-related anxiety. Eventually, the animal is brought into position. You look away at the wrong moment, which means you hear everything. The work must be done quickly and skillfully. An animal that struggles is dangerous, and poorly handled meat can be damaged or contaminated. The butcher uses a sharp knife, practiced hands, and the calm expression of someone preparing lunch rather than permanently altering the atmosphere of your morning. Blood runs into a wooden trough. Some may be collected for cooking. Very little from a valuable animal is wasted if it can be eaten, sold, rendered, processed, fed to dogs, or transformed into something a customer can be persuaded to purchase. Your next task is to help remove the hide. The carcass is heavy and warm. Steam rises faintly in the cool air. You grip a leg while the butcher separates skin from flesh with short strokes. Your hands become slippery almost immediately. The hide will not necessarily remain here. It may pass to a skinner or tannery, where it begins its second career in shoes, belts, harnesses, book covers, or an especially uncomfortable chair. You begin to understand that the medieval city wastes surprisingly little. It merely smells like it wastes everything. Inside the shop, the butcher hangs sections of meat from iron hooks. Large joints rest on boards facing the street, exposed to dust, flies, smoke, and the close inspection of customers who touch everything before deciding it looks suspicious. A woman points to a piece of mutton. She asks whether it is fresh. The butcher tells her it was walking this morning. She asks for a lower price. This is apparently not fresh enough. You take up a cleaver and begin chopping bones on a thick wooden block. The first strike barely marks them. The second sends a chip across the table. On the third, the bone splits with a crack loud enough to silence a nearby dog. The butcher nods. This is the closest thing you will receive to praise. Every part of the animal has a destination. Prime cuts go to customers who can afford them. Cheaper pieces become stews or pies. Organs are sold quickly. Fat can be rendered. Bones may be used for broth, tools, handles, glue, or other crafts. Intestines can become sausage casings. Nothing says civilization quite like looking at an intestine and seeing future packaging. Then you reach the less useful remains. Buckets fill with scraps, spoiled material, stomach contents, and pieces that even the dogs examine with professional caution. In some towns, rules attempt to control where butchers slaughter animals and dispose of waste, especially because blood and offal can block drains, foul rivers, and create extraordinary complaints from neighbors. Enforcement varies. Convenience usually wins. The butcher tells you to carry a bucket toward the stream. You lift it carefully. It is heavier than expected and warmer than anything in a bucket should be. You move through the alley, trying not to spill it while residents step aside with expressions of deep social judgment. A child asks what is inside. You tell him breakfast. He stops asking questions. Back at the shop, flies have arrived in greater numbers. You wave them away with a cloth. They return immediately, confident that the legal system is on their side. The market grows louder. Customers argue over prices. Cleavers strike blocks. Animals cry from nearby pens. Sellers shout about fresh pork, good beef, cheap bones, and pies whose contents remain protected by tradition and silence. By midday, your shoulders ache and your apron feels as though it has become part of your skin. Your boots slide on the floor. A dog has stolen something from beneath the table and is refusing to explain itself. Still, people need food. Your work turns living animals into meals, candles, leather, glue, tools, and profit. It is skilled, necessary labor, even if respectable citizens prefer not to watch it happen. They want meat. They simply do not want the animal involved. As you scrape the block clean, a man appears at the doorway carrying a damaged horse hide over one shoulder. He asks whether anyone can help drag a carcass from the next street. The butcher looks at you. You are already wearing the correct apron. 6. The knacker and flayer. When the horse stops moving, you are already wearing the correct apron. The man leads you into the next street, where a small crowd has gathered around a dead horse. Nobody is helping. They are observing. Medieval citizens possess the same instinct as modern people who slow down beside a traffic accident. Deep concern, mild horror, and absolutely no intention of becoming involved. The horse lies on its side beside a cart, one leg bent beneath it. Flies have already begun circling. The owner stands nearby with his arms folded, looking less heartbroken than financially inconvenienced. The animal may have collapsed from age, injury, exhaustion, disease, or a combination of all four. Horses are valuable, but medieval working animals are often pushed hard. They haul carts over broken roads, carry heavy riders, and work until their bodies can no longer cooperate. Now the city needs the carcass removed. That is your problem. You and the knacker loop ropes around the horse's legs and body. A knacker deals with worn-out or dead animals, recovering whatever can still be used. The work sits somewhere between butcher, recycler, transporter, and the person everyone avoids inviting to weddings. You pull. Nothing happens. A dead horse is extremely heavy and offers no assistance whatsoever. You pull again while the knacker pushes with a wooden pole. The body shifts several inches, leaving a dark stain beneath it. The crowd steps backward with perfect coordination. One man offers advice. He recommends pulling harder. You briefly consider giving him the rope. Eventually, you drag the carcass onto a low cart. The wheels groan under the weight. The owner asks whether he will receive payment for the hide. The knacker examines the animal, notes its poor condition, and names a price. The owner reacts as though personally insulted. The horse remains neutral. You haul the cart toward the edge of the city, where unpleasant trades are often pushed away from markets, churches, and wealthy homes. The journey is slow. Every rut threatens to tip the load. Dogs follow behind. Children follow the dogs. At the yard, the real work begins. You help roll the horse onto packed earth. The flayer sharpens a long knife, testing the edge with his thumb. The hide must be removed before decay ruins it, especially in warm weather. You grip one leg while he cuts around the hoof. The skin is tough. He works carefully, slicing and pulling, separating hide from flesh. You assist by keeping tension on the heavy sheet as it comes away. It is warm, wet, and far heavier than expected. Modern leather goods arrive polished, stitched, and smelling faintly expensive. They do not include a label explaining that someone once stood in a muddy yard peeling them from a horse, while 3 dogs argued over a tendon. The hide can be sold to a tanner, though it will require extensive cleaning and processing. Hair may be collected for stuffing or plaster. Fat can be rendered into grease, soap, or tallow. Bones may become glue, handles, gaming pieces, fertilizer, or material for craftsmen. Even hooves have value. You are surrounded by death, but economically speaking, the horse is still surprisingly active. The flayer opens the body cavity. The smell changes immediately. You step back, but not quickly enough. Warm gases escape with a sound like a sigh from the underworld. The dogs become extremely interested. You become extremely interested in another career. Some flesh may be usable for animal feed, depending on the animal's condition and local practice. Diseased meat should not enter the human food supply, although dishonest sellers and desperate buyers sometimes make decisions that later become community-wide digestive events. The knacker examines the organs for signs of illness. You do not know what he sees. You only know he stops touching one of them. The unusable remains must be buried, burned, dumped in a designated place, or otherwise taken away from inhabited streets. Leaving a carcass to rot invites smell, vermin, scavengers, and disease, even if medieval explanations for illness do not match modern germ theory. You help load the worst remains into a pit. Lime may be scattered over decomposing material in some contexts, though it is no magical solution. Mostly, distance and burial are doing the work. By afternoon, your arms shake from pulling and cutting. Blood has dried beneath your fingernails. Your clothing carries a smell that appears permanent. The children have finally wandered away. The dogs have not. Before you leave, the flayer folds the hide and drops it across your shoulders. It is heavy enough to bend your knees. He tells you to deliver it to the tannery. You walk back toward the city carrying what looks like an enormous wet blanket with legs recently removed. People move aside. A woman covers her nose. A merchant complains that you are frightening his customers. You continue walking, leaving small drops behind you. At the end of the lane, the tannery waits beside a sluggish stream. Wooden vats stand in rows, filled with cloudy liquids. Hides hang from rails. The air has a thick, sour smell capable of entering the body through closed eyes. A worker waves you closer. Behind him is a vat containing lime, old skins, and a liquid you strongly suspect once belonged inside several chamber pots. You thought the dead horse smelled bad. The leather industry is about to correct you. 7. The tanner, turning rotting skin into luxury. The leather industry is about to correct you. You step into the tannery carrying the horsehide across your shoulders, and the smell closes around you like a heavy curtain. It is sour, wet, animal, chemical, and strangely warm. The air seems thick enough to chew, although chewing would be a catastrophic decision. The tanner points toward a pile of fresh hides. You add yours to the top. It slides halfway down and lands with a damp slap. Leather is essential to medieval life. Shoes, belts, saddles, harnesses, bags, gloves, knife sheaths, shield coverings, buckets, book bindings, and countless straps depend on it. Nearly everyone uses leather. Nearly everyone also prefers the tannery to be located somewhere else. For good reason. Tanneries are often placed near water and toward the edges of towns, where the smell, waste, and dirty runoff cause fewer arguments with wealthy neighbors. This does not eliminate complaints. It simply gives the complaints farther to travel. Your first task is washing the hides. You drag several toward the stream, where they are soaked and rinsed to remove blood, dirt, and remaining flesh. The wet skins become heavier with every moment. You lean backward, pulling with both hands while your boots slide through black mud. One hide folds over your foot. You lift it and discover something small living underneath. You decide the creature owns the area now. After washing, the hides may be soaked in pits or vats to loosen hair and unwanted tissue. Lime solutions are commonly used for this stage. Other older methods involve mixtures that are even more memorable, including stale urine or animal dung, depending on the process, location, and type of leather being produced. The tanner hands you a pole. You use it to push hides beneath the cloudy surface of a lime-filled vat. The liquid splashes onto your forearm. It burns almost immediately. You rinse the skin with water, but the irritation remains. Quicklime and strongly alkaline mixtures can damage flesh, especially with repeated exposure. Your hands are already cracked from cold water and labor. The chemicals settle into every cut with the enthusiasm of an invading army. There are no rubber gloves. There is only experience, caution, and the useful knowledge that screaming does not improve the leather. After soaking, the hair must be removed. You lift a hide from the vat and carry it to a sloping wooden beam. It is swollen, pale, and slippery. You spread it across the curved surface, then take up a blunt-edged scraping knife. You push the blade down the skin. Wet hair comes away in thick clumps. It sticks to your sleeves, your apron, the beam, and eventually your face. The removed hair may be collected and reused in plaster, stuffing, or other trades, because the medieval economy looks at waste and asks whether it can still be sold to a builder. You scrape again. A line of softened flesh peels away from the underside. This is the part people do not imagine while buying a fine leather purse. They admire the stitching. They praise the color. They do not picture you bent over a horsehide, removing tissue with a curved blade while a fly attempts to enter your ear. The work must be thorough. Any remaining flesh or fat may rot and damage the final leather. You scrape until your shoulders burn and your fingers stiffen around the handle. Then the hide is washed again, and soaked again, and handled again. Some hides are treated with dung-based mixtures during a softening process, sometimes called batting. Enzymes in the material help make the skin more flexible and prepare it for tanning. You do not know the chemistry. You know only that a bucket arrives from the kennels, and your master says it is valuable. You briefly reconsider the meaning of value. The prepared hides are finally placed into tanning pits containing water and tannin-rich plant material, often made from ground bark such as oak. The tannins bind with the skin's proteins, helping prevent decay and turning raw hide into durable leather. This process is not quick. Hides may remain in increasingly strong tanning solutions for many months, depending on the desired result. They must be moved between pits, checked, turned, and kept fully submerged. You stand beside a row of vats, using a hook to shift heavy skins through dark brown liquid. Bark fragments float on the surface. The smell is less violent here, but it has greater patience. It settles into your hair. It enters your clothes. It follows you home. When tanning is complete, the leather must be dried carefully, stretched, worked, trimmed, oiled, and sometimes dyed. Too much heat makes it hard. Poor handling causes cracks. Uneven tanning can ruin months of labor. You rub oil into a finished hide, kneading it until the leather becomes supple. For the first time, the material looks valuable. The rough horsehide has become smooth, strong, and useful. Soon, a saddler may cut it into straps. A shoemaker may turn it into boots. A merchant may sell those boots to someone who complains they cost too much. That person will never smell this yard. By evening, your back aches from scraping, your arms sting from lime, and your skin carries several colors not found in nature. The tanner gives you a small payment and gestures toward a stack of specially selected skins. These are cleaner, finer, and intended for a different workshop. A parchment maker needs them. You lift the bundle. It still smells like the tannery, but only because you now smell like the tannery too. A head stretched across wooden frames, pale skins are drying in the fatting light. Tomorrow's books are waiting to be scraped. 8. The parchment maker, preparing a book one dead sheep at a time. Tomorrow's books are waiting to be scraped. You carry the bundle of skins into a quieter workshop, where pale sheets hang across wooden frames like laundry from a household with deeply unsettling taste. The smell is cleaner than the tannery. This is not the same as saying it is pleasant. There is lime, wet skin, damp wood, chalk dust, and the faint animal scent of material that has not yet fully accepted its future as literature. The parchment maker takes the bundle from you and begins inspecting each skin. Sheep, goats, and calves can all provide parchment. The finest material requires careful selection, skilled preparation, and a great deal of patient scraping. Books may look peaceful. Their production is not. Before paper becomes common in Europe, parchment is one of the main writing materials for manuscripts, legal documents, religious texts, accounts, and official records. It is strong, durable, and expensive. Very expensive. A large book may require the skins of many animals. Every clean page begins with a creature that once spent its days eating grass and refusing to walk through gates. Now it is part of the publishing industry. Your first task is soaking the skins. They are placed in water and lime to loosen hair and remaining tissue. You stir them with a wooden pole while trying to keep the liquid away from your face. Your hands are already irritated from the tannery, so naturally this workshop provides another opportunity to place them in alkaline water. Medieval career development is extremely consistent. After soaking, you pull out a skin. It is swollen, slippery, and heavier than expected. Water runs down your sleeves as you drag it toward a wooden frame known as a hearse. The frame is larger than you are and fitted with cords around the edges. The parchment maker shows you how to attach the skin. Small stones or rolled pieces are wrapped into the edges, creating grips for the cords. Each cord is tightened gradually, stretching the hide outward in every direction. You pull one too hard. The edge begins to tear. The parchment maker makes a sound through his nose. This is not quite a word, but it contains the full emotional force of an unpaid invoice. You loosen the cord. The skin must be tight, but not so tight that it splits. As it dries, it contracts naturally, creating even greater tension. The frame creaks softly while the surface becomes smoother and firmer. Now comes the scraping. You take up a curved knife, often called a lunellum because its blade resembles a half-moon. You hold it with both hands and draw it carefully across the damp skin. A thin layer peels away. You scrape again. Hair roots, fat, and remaining tissue must be removed without cutting through the surface. Too much pressure creates a hole. Too little leaves a rough patch that will later catch a pen. The work is slow. Your shoulders tighten. Your wrists ache. Every stroke must be controlled, especially where the skin is thinner near the belly and legs. A fly lands on the frame. You blow at it. It moves 2 inches and resumes supervising. As the skin dries, the parchment maker tightens the cords. The surface becomes pale and taut. You scrape one side, then the other, moving around the frame while sunlight shifts across the workshop floor. The material does not become smooth by accident. It becomes smooth because you spend hours leaning into it while your back quietly files a formal complaint. Once fully dried, the sheet is cut from the frame. You expect it to feel soft. Instead, it is firm, springy, and slightly translucent. The hair side and flesh side may have different textures and tones. A skilled scribe can recognize the difference immediately. You can recognize only that both sides required far too much work. The parchment is then trimmed and rubbed with materials such as chalk or pumice to improve the writing surface. You dust it carefully, producing a fine powder that settles in your hair and nose. Across the room, another worker cuts sheets into matching sizes. These will be folded into gatherings, stitched together, and eventually bound into a book. The pages are not yet written. They already represent days of labor. Soon, scribes will rule lines across them, copy words by hand, decorate initials, correct mistakes, and occasionally scrape away unwanted ink so the surface can be reused. There is no delete key. There is only a knife, and the hope that the mistake was not made in red pigment. The parchment maker holds one finished sheet toward the light. A small hole appears near the edge where the animal's skin was damaged long before slaughter. The craftsman marks it so a scribe can work around it. Even the sheep's old injuries have become editorial concerns. By late afternoon, several sheets lie stacked beneath weights. They are pale, clean, and ready for merchants, monasteries, courts, or wealthy households. Nobody looking at them would imagine the soaking vats, the loosened hair, the lime burns, or the hours of scraping. That is the strange dignity of your work. You take something raw and unpleasant and create a surface capable of carrying prayers, laws, poems, debts, recipes, and extremely long arguments about theology. Human knowledge rests beneath your scraped fingernails. The parchment maker hands you a narrow offcut as part of your payment. It is too small for a book page but useful for a label, note, or account. You tuck it into your belt. Outside, a cart passes carrying rolls of woolen cloth toward the fulling mill. The driver asks whether you need work. He says the cloth only needs cleaning. After the tannery and parchment yard, this sounds almost respectable. Then you notice the open vats and the buckets of stale urine beside them. 9. The fuller, an exciting career in other people's urine, and the buckets of stale urine beside them. The cart driver smiles, as though this is a perfectly ordinary workplace benefit. In fairness, it is. You follow the rolls of woolen cloth into the fulling workshop, where damp heat hangs beneath the rafters and every surface seems to have been splashed by something nobody wants identified. The air smells of wet wool, soap, smoke, sweat, clay, and the unmistakable sharpness of urine that has been stored long enough to develop professional confidence. The master fuller greets you by pointing at a vat. Inside lies a heavy length of woven wool. Your job is to climb in. Before cloth can become a fine cloak, warm blanket, fashionable gown, or pair of leggings tight enough to cause diplomatic concern, it must be cleaned and thickened. Freshly woven wool still contains grease, dirt, oil, and substances added during spinning and weaving. Fulling removes these impurities and makes the fibers mat together, producing cloth that is denser, stronger, and better able to resist wind and rain. It also gives you a reason to spend the morning standing ankle deep in somebody else's contribution to textile manufacturing. You remove your shoes. The floor is cold beneath your feet. The fuller gestures impatiently. You step into the vat. The liquid squeezes between your toes. It is warm. You immediately wish it were not. Stale urine contains ammonia, which can help remove grease from wool. In some places, it is collected from households, taverns, public containers, or anyone willing to exchange bodily waste for a small payment. Other cleaning agents may include soap, water, fuller's earth, or mixtures selected according to local custom. You do not know who supplied this particular batch. That is probably a kindness. The master shows you the rhythm. You tread down on the cloth, lifting and pressing it repeatedly with your feet. The wool is thick and resistant, folding beneath your weight before springing partly upward again. Step, press, lift, turn. The process resembles crushing grapes, except the final product is a cloak and nobody offers you wine. You continue. The wet wool grows heavier. Your legs begin to ache. Warm vapor rises around you while droplets gather on your face. Another worker uses a wooden pole to turn the cloth and redistribute it inside the vat. He splashes you across the chest. He apologizes. You both understand that the apology has no practical value. In larger or more advanced workshops, water-powered fulling mills may use heavy wooden hammers to beat cloth mechanically. These machines reduce some of the need for human treading, though they introduce a new concern: standing near large moving blocks of timber designed to strike fabric with relentless force. This workshop still trusts your feet. You stomp for what feels like several years. The fibers gradually tighten and felt together. The cloth shrinks, which is desirable provided it shrinks evenly. If it is worked poorly, folded incorrectly, or left too long, the finished material can become distorted. The fuller checks it often. He presses the wool between his fingers, stretches an edge, studies the surface, and then tells you to continue. You ask how much longer. He says until it is ready. This is the medieval version of a progress report. When the first cloth is finally removed, you help carry it toward a rinsing area. It weighs as much as a small person and has approximately the same desire to cooperate. Clean water must wash away the grease, dirt, urine, and cleaning materials. You drag the fabric through a trough, press it, turn it, and rinse it again. The water runs cloudy, then brown, then slightly less brown. This is considered success. After washing, the cloth may be stretched across a frame known as a tenter. Small hooks hold the edges in place while it dries and is adjusted to the desired width and shape. You attach one corner carefully. The wet fabric pulls against you. Another worker fastens the opposite side. This is where the phrase "on tenterhooks" will eventually come from, though at the moment you are less interested in language than in preventing the cloth from snapping free and wrapping itself around your head. Once dried, the surface may be raised with tasels or other tools, then sheared to produce a smooth, even finish. Every stage requires skill. A mistake can ruin cloth worth far more than your wages. The merchant who ordered it arrives near midday. He runs one clean hand over the finished surface. He praises its softness. He asks whether it can be cheaper. He does not ask why the workers are barefoot. You look down at your legs. They are red from friction, damp to the knees, and carrying a scent that may follow you into the next century. Still, the cloth is transformed. It arrived greasy, loose, and rough. It leaves dense, clean, warm, and valuable. Soon, someone wealthy will wear it through the winter and complain that the sleeves are unfashionable. You climb out of the vat and rinse your feet in cold water. The fuller tosses you a fresh bundle and points toward another tub. Before you can step inside, a woman from the neighboring dye house appears in the doorway. Steam rolls behind her in colored clouds. She needs someone strong enough to stir a boiling vat. You look at the urine. You look at the boiling dye. For the first time today, fire feels like the cleaner option. 10. The dyer, boiling fashion in a cloud of fumes. For the first time today, fire feels like the cleaner option. This belief lasts until you enter the dye house. The workshop is warm, wet, and filled with colored steam. Great vats sit above brick furnaces, bubbling gently as if preparing soups that could permanently stain your skeleton. Bundles of wool hang from beams. Wooden poles lean against the walls. Every table, bucket, sleeve, and human hand carries traces of red, yellow, green, blue, brown, or some mysterious shade produced when several expensive mistakes are combined. The dyer looks you over. He notices the smell of the fulling vat. He says you will fit in perfectly. Before cloth can become fashionable, it needs color. Natural dyes may come from plants, roots, bark, insects, lichens, and imported materials. Woad can produce blue. Madder roots can create shades of red. Weld gives yellow. Other ingredients provide browns, greens, blacks, and colors with impressive names designed to justify impressive prices. The difficulty is persuading those colors to remain inside the cloth. This often requires a mordant, a substance that helps the dye bond with the fibers. Alum is especially valuable, though other materials may be used depending on the fabric and desired result. The process demands experience, because medieval dyeing is not simply throwing a shirt into colored water and hopping for emotional growth. The dyer points toward a vat. You take hold of a long wooden pole. Inside, several yards of woolen cloth are submerged in a dark red liquid. The mixture simmers above the fire, sending waves of heat toward your face. You stir. The cloth resists. Wet wool is heavy under ordinary circumstances. Wet wool inside a deep boiling vat has the physical character of a drowned mattress. You push the pole downward and turn the bundle slowly. The color must reach every fold. If part of the cloth remains trapped against itself, the result may be uneven, leaving pale streaks or patches. A wealthy customer does not pay for mostly red. He pays for red. Specifically, he pays for a red that makes everyone else at church aware that he owns more money than restraint. You stir harder. Steam dampens your hair. Sweat runs beneath your clothing. Smoke from the furnace catches in your throat while the dye gives the air a sharp, earthy smell. The dyer adds another measure of prepared material. He does not use a thermometer. He judges the heat by experience, the behavior of the liquid, the fire beneath the vat, and perhaps a private arrangement with several saints. Timing matters, temperature matters, the strength of the dye bath matters, the quality of the water matters. Even the mineral content can affect the final shade. You ask how he knows when the cloth is ready. He says he looks at it. Another excellent medieval progress report. When the dyer finally orders the fabric removed, you and another worker hook it with poles and lift. The cloth rises from the vat in a dripping red mass. Hot liquid pours onto the floor. A splash lands on your boot. You jump backward, nearly knocking over a bucket of yellow dye, which would have transformed a difficult morning into an experimental green afternoon. Together, you carry the cloth toward a trough for rinsing. The color appears darker while wet and may change as it dries. This means the dyer must predict the finished result before the finished result exists. It is like choosing paint from a tiny paper sample, except the paint costs several sheep, and the customer may threaten legal action. Nearby, an apprentice grinds dried matter roots into powder. Another tends a blue dye vat that requires careful preparation. Some blue dyeing processes using woad involve fermentation and alkaline liquid, producing smells that make your earlier urine-filled employment feel strangely familiar. You begin to suspect every medieval luxury starts inside, a barrel nobody wants to approach. The rinsed cloth is carried outside and hung to dry. In the daylight, the color slowly brightens. The dyer examines it from several angles. He frowns, touches the fabric, and announces that it must go into the vat again. You stare at him. He stares back. The cloth returns to the workshop. Producing deep, rich colors may require repeated dyeing, and certain shades are more expensive because their ingredients are rare, imported, difficult to prepare, or needed in large quantities. Bright and lasting colors become signs of wealth. The poor wear whatever color remains after practicality, cost, and repeated washing have finished negotiating. You stir the vat again. Hours pass. Your shoulders ache from moving the pole. Your face feels roasted. Your fingers are stained red, except for one thumb that has somehow become blue. The combination makes you look as though you have personally strangled a peacock. A merchant arrives to inspect another order. He complains that a piece of black cloth is not black enough. The dyer explains that rich black can require multiple dyes and careful preparation. The merchant says black is black. Everyone in the workshop quietly dislikes him. At last, the red cloth is rinsed and stretched to dry. This time, the dyer approves. The finished color is deep and even, the sort of red that will become a gown, hood, or cloak worn by someone who has never stirred anything heavier than a cup of wine. Your labor has turned plain wool into status. It has also turned your skin into a permanent record of today's inventory. As evening approaches, you carry a basket of freshly dyed linen toward the washing yard. There, women stand beside troughs and river water, beating cloth against boards beneath a gray sky. One of them hands you a bundle covered in mud, grease, and blood. She tells you it only needs a quick wash. After spending all day creating beautiful colors, you are about to learn how quickly people ruin them. 11. The laundress, washing the city in freezing water. After spending all day creating beautiful colors, you are about to learn how quickly people ruin them. The laundress drops the bundle into your arms. It is wet, heavy, and shaped like a sleeping child who has recently fallen into a ditch. Mud stains the lower edges. Grease marks the sleeves. One corner is dark with blood, while the front carries a pale yellow patch that nobody has volunteered to explain. You carry it toward the river. Around you, women kneel beside wooden boards, stone edges, tubs, and baskets of dirty linen. Some work for wealthy households. Others wash clothing for inns, hospitals, workshops, or anyone willing to pay. A few have brought their own family's things, because medieval domestic labor remains unpaid even when it is trying to freeze your fingers off. You set the bundle down. The laundress tells you to sort it. Fine linen must be treated differently from rough cloth. Colored garments require care because dyes can fade, bleed, or react badly to strong cleaning mixtures. Wool may shrink or felt if handled too aggressively. Naturally, every item in the basket appears to have been made from a different material by someone, personally committed to making your work difficult. You begin with a linen shirt. It is stiff with sweat and dirt. You soak it in cold water, rub soap into the worst areas, and scrub the cloth against a wooden board. Medieval soap can be made from animal fat or oil combined with an alkaline substance such as lye. Ash-derived cleaning mixtures may also be used, along with hot water where fuel and equipment permit. Here beside the river, the water is not hot. It is barely liquid. You push both hands beneath the surface. Pain shoots through your fingers. For a moment, your skin feels as though it has been bitten by the entire winter. You pull back, flex your hands, then continue because the laundry has not developed sympathy. You rub the fabric. Rinse it. Rub again. The stain remains. You beat the shirt against the board. This is less delicate, but emotionally satisfying. Around you, wet cloth slaps against wood and stone. Women talk while they work, exchanging news, complaints, prices, births, deaths, marriages, and opinions about neighbors who are conveniently absent. The washing place is part workplace, part information network. It is essentially social media, except everyone's hands are numb and the gossip arrives attached to someone's underclothes. You lift another garment from the basket. This one belongs to an inn guest. You know this because it smells of smoke, ale, onions, and the kind of confidence produced by sleeping indoors while somebody else washes your shirt. You scrub the collar. A small insect crawls from the seam. Then another. Lice and fleas are common companions in crowded living conditions. Washing, boiling, combing, airing, and delousing can help, though complete victory is difficult when bedding, clothing, animals, and people remain in close contact. You pinch the insect between two fingernails. The laundress tells you not to stop every time you find one. You look at the shirt. The shirt appears to be moving slightly. You continue washing. Some laundry must be boiled in large vessels, especially linen. Heating water requires fuel, however, and fuel costs money. Water must also be carried, fires tended, tubs filled, and heavy wet cloth lifted afterward. Nothing about cleaning is automatic. There is no machine quietly turning in the next room while you drink coffee and become irritated by an email. You are the machine, and the machine has lower back pain. The laundress hands you a wooden paddle. A batch of linen has been placed inside a large steaming tub near the yard. You stir it carefully while alkaline cleaning liquid works through the fibers. Steam rises into your face. After the river's cold, the heat is almost pleasant. Then a wet sleeve wraps itself around the paddle, twists, and pulls the handle downward. You struggle with it while the laundress watches. She tells you not to let the cloth knot. You thank her for providing this information after the cloth has knotted. Once the washing is complete, everything must be rinsed thoroughly. Soap, ash, dirt, and loosened grease need to leave the fabric rather than simply relocate to a more fashionable area. You carry the heavy linen back to the river. Wet cloth weighs far more than dry cloth, a fact nobody mentions when describing laundry as women's work. You bend at the waist, lift the bundle, and feel your spine send a message directly to your ancestors. At the water's edge, you rinse each piece again. Then comes wringing. You and another worker take opposite ends of a sheet and twist. Water pours out between you. The sheet tightens like a rope, pulling against your wrists. You twist harder. The other worker suddenly lets go to adjust her grip. The wet sheet spins back and strikes you across the face. Nobody laughs loudly. This is because everyone is too tired. Clean cloth must now be dried. On a clear day, it can be spread across grass, laid over bushes, hung on lines, or draped across frames. Sunlight and fresh air help, but the weather has its own management style. Dark clouds gather overhead. The laundress looks up. You look up. A raindrop lands on the clean sheet. Then another. Within moments, everyone is pulling down linen, gathering shirts, lifting baskets, and carrying the entire day's work under shelter before the sky washes it again for free but badly. You run across the yard with an armful of damp fabric blocking your view. Your boot catches on a stone. You stumble forward, nearly dropping a wealthy woman's undergarments into the mud. You recover just in time. History will never record this act of heroism. Under the shelter, the laundry is hung wherever space can be found. Shirts drip from beams. Sheets cover doorways. Stockings dangle beside cooking pots. The room looks as though an entire family has vanished and left only its damp outer layers behind. By late afternoon, your hands are wrinkled, cracked, and red. Your shoulders throb. Your clothing is soaked from chest to ankle, though none of it is noticeably cleaner. Still, the muddy garments are pale again. The blood has faded. The linen smells of soap, smoke, and river water instead of the people who wore it. Tomorrow, servants will collect the bundles. Their employers may complain about a missing button. They will not ask how many hours you spent kneeling in freezing water to restore their sleeves. As you carry the final basket indoors, the daylight begins to fade. A nearby workshop has started lighting candles, each one producing a soft yellow flame and a thin thread of smoke. The laundress points toward the chandler's yard. She says they need someone to stir the fat. Your hands are frozen. Fortunately, your next job involves boiling an animal. 12. The tallow chandler, making light from boiled fat. Fortunately, your next job involves boiling an animal. Not the entire animal, obviously. Only the parts nobody wanted to eat. You enter the chandler's workshop carrying a basket of damp laundry, which is immediately taken from you and replaced with a wooden stirring paddle. This exchange happens so quickly that you begin to suspect medieval employment is less a career system and more an elaborate conspiracy involving buckets. The workshop is hot and dim. A large iron cauldron hangs above the fire, filled with pale lumps of animal fat slowly collapsing into a yellow liquid. Smoke gathers beneath the rafters. The air smells of grease, scorched meat, wet wool, and a kitchen where someone began cooking dinner 3 days ago and then died before opening a window. The chandler points at the cauldron. You stir. Tallow is rendered fat, commonly obtained from cattle or sheep. Once cleaned and melted, It can be used to make candles, soap, lubricants, and other useful products. For poorer households, tallow candles provide a cheaper alternative to beeswax. They also provide smoke, odor, dripping grease, and a gentle reminder that your lighting system used to have kidneys. You push the paddle through the melting fat. Soft pieces roll beneath the surface. Dark scraps rise to the top and must be skimmed away. The liquid grows clearer as it heats, though clear is a generous description for something resembling soup prepared by a butcher with emotional problems. The chandler hands you a shallow spoon. You begin removing the impurities. A piece of tissue clings to the spoon. You shake it. It remains attached. You shake harder. It flies across the room and lands beside a basket of finished candles. The chandler looks at you. You retrieve it silently. Once the fat has rendered, it must be strained and allowed to settle. Clean tallow produces a better candle, though even good tallow may burn with an unpleasant smell compared with beeswax. Beeswax candles are brighter, cleaner, and more expensive. Churches and wealthy households may use them more often. Ordinary people generally rely on whatever does not require selling a chair to illuminate another chair. The candle-making process begins with wicks. Lengths of twisted fiber hang from wooden rods. You take one rod in both hands and lower the wicks into a container of melted tallow. Down they go. Then up again. A thin, greasy coating forms around each wick. You wait for it to cool. Then you dip them again. And again. And again. Each layer makes the candle slightly thicker. It is slow, repetitive work requiring patience and steady movement. Dip too quickly, and the warm layer melts the earlier coating. Wait too long, and production slows while the workshop owner begins calculating your wages with visible sadness. You lower the candles once more. Hot tallow splashes onto your wrist. You jerk backward. The rod tilts, and 3 soft candles strike one another, fusing into a pale cluster shaped like a religious object nobody would willingly pray to. The chandler separates them with his fingers. He says you must keep them straight. You resist the temptation to ask whether the cows were straight when they entered the cauldron. Nearby, another worker pours tallow into molds. Molded candles can be produced more evenly, though the equipment costs money. Dipped candles remain simple and practical, even when their final shapes suggest they were made during an earthquake. The finished candles are trimmed and stacked. Some are thin enough for household use. Others are larger, intended to burn for longer periods. Their quality varies according to the fat, wick, and skill of the maker. You light one to test it. The flame flickers. A thread of black smoke curls upward. Melted tallow runs down the side and gathers at the base. The smell enters your nose with the warmth of roasted mutton, but without the emotional support of dinner. Still, it produces light. In a city where streets become dangerously dark after sunset, every small flame matters. Candles allow people to cook, pray, read, sew, drink, argue, gamble, and search for the object they were holding moments before the candle went out. Light is expensive enough that many people use it carefully. A household may gather around one flame rather than illuminate several rooms. Work continues only while the cost of the candle can be justified. Nobody leaves 6 candles burning because the room feels cozy. Cozy is not in the budget. The chandler gives you another task, making rushlights. A dried rush can be peeled to expose its soft inner pith, then drawn through melted fat. These simple lights are cheaper than candles but burn for a limited time and require attention. You take a rush and dip it. It emerges thin, greasy, and slightly bent. This is enough to light a poor household for part of an evening. You consider your own age, posture, and current smell. You and the rushlight have much in common. By nightfall, rows of candles hang from rods across the workshop. They are pale, uneven, and valuable. Your hair smells of smoke. Your hands are coated in grease. Every surface you touch becomes shiny. The chandler pays you with 2 small candles, apparently believing you now wish to take the workplace atmosphere home. You step outside. The market is closing, and shadows stretch across the lane. One of your candles would provide light for several hours, assuming a rat does not eat it first. Tallow candles are attractive to hungry animals because, inconveniently, they are still made from food. Across the square, fishmongers are packing away their stalls. One seller waves urgently. He has several baskets of fish that must be cleaned and sold before morning. The candles may smell like dead sheep. Your next workplace smells like the sea has filed for bankruptcy. 13. The fishmonger, selling lunch before lunch notices. Your next workplace smells like the sea has filed for bankruptcy. You cross the square toward the fish stalls, where wooden tables are covered with baskets, knives, scales, salt, damp cloth, and creatures staring upward with the calm disappointment of animals that expected the day to end differently. The fishmonger points to a basket. Inside are eels. They are still moving. You consider returning to the candle workshop. Boiled fat suddenly seems organized. Fish is an important part of medieval urban diets, especially on the many days when religious practice restricts the eating of meat. Depending on the city's location and trading connections, markets may sell freshwater fish, coastal catches, shellfish, salted herring, smoked fish, dried cod, and anything else capable of surviving the journey without becoming legally questionable. Fresh fish, however, must be sold quickly. There is no refrigerated display case. There is no crushed ice machine humming politely beneath the counter. There is only weather, salt, and urgency. The fishmonger hands you a knife and tells you to gut the larger fish. You place one on the board. Its skin is slick beneath your fingers. You make a careful cut along the belly, trying not to push too deeply. The knife opens the body and the smell becomes more specific. You remove the organs and drop them into a bucket. A cat appears beside your ankle. You did not see it arrive. It looks at the bucket, then at you. This is clearly a negotiation. You toss it a scrap. 3 more cats emerge from nowhere. The medieval fish market has an extremely effective loyalty program. You scrape scales from the fish with the back of the knife. They fly across the table and stick to your sleeves, face, and hair. One lands on your lip. You remove it quietly and continue, because dignity left the city shortly after the privy pit. The cleaned fish are rinsed in water and arranged for sale. Their freshness may be judged by smell, firmness, eyes, and gills. Buyers inspect them closely, especially because dishonest sellers may attempt to disguise fish that has passed from fresh into philosophical. An older woman approaches the stall. She lifts one fish. She presses its side. She opens its mouth. She smells it. Then she looks at you, as though you personally caused the tide. She asks when it was caught. You tell her this morning. She asks which morning. The fishmonger quickly names a lower price. She buys 2. Nearby, barrels of salted herring are opened. Salted fish can travel farther and last longer, making it valuable for towns distant from the coast. Drying and smoking also preserve catches, though the finished product may require soaking before cooking and can contain enough salt to make drinking water feel like a full-time profession. You lift a barrel lid. The smell rises with military discipline. The herring are packed tightly in layers, shining in brine. You reach in and pull several free. Cold liquid runs down your arm and enters your sleeve. You now smell like a harbor wearing a shirt. The fishmonger sends you to carry a basket toward a customer at an inn. The load is awkward, wet, and heavier than it appears. You weave through the market while trying not to spill any fish into the street. A dog follows you, then two children, then one of the cats. You have accidentally formed a small religious procession. At the inn, the cook inspects the order. He complains that one eel is too thin. You explain that you did not raise it. He is unmoved. Back at the stall, the sun has climbed higher. This is bad news. Warmth encourages spoilage, flies, and the increasingly creative use of cloth soaked in water to keep the fish cool. You fan the display. Flies land anyway. You wave them off. They return with reinforcements. The fishmonger begins shouting louder, advertising fresh river fish, good herring, fine eels, and prices so generous that refusing them would be an insult to several saints. A man asks whether the fish is suitable for a fast day. The fishmonger says yes. The man points toward a beaver tail hanging at a neighboring stall and begins an argument about whether certain aquatic animals count as fish. You decide medieval theology has entered an area beyond your wages. As the afternoon continues, unsold fresh fish become a problem. Some can be salted, smoked, cooked, or sold cheaply. Others have reached a stage where even the cats begin requesting documentation. You lift one from the bottom of a basket. Its flesh is soft. Its eye has collapsed inward. The fishmonger looks at it, looks at the closing market, and tells you to offer it to the pie seller. This explains several things about medieval pies. By evening, the stall is nearly empty. You scrub the boards, rinse the knives, carry away the awful bucket, and chase a cat that has climbed inside an open barrel. Your hands are cut from fins and blades. Your clothing is wet. Every dog in the district considers you family. Still, the city has eaten. Wealthy tables received fresh pike and salmon. Ordinary households bought herring and smaller fish. Inns filled pots with whatever remained affordable after the best catches disappeared. You have helped turn a fragile, rapidly spoiling harvest into dinner. The fishmonger pays you with a small salted herring. It is stiff enough to use as a writing tool. Across the lane, warm air drifts from a bakery. The scent of fresh bread rolls over the market, soft and comforting, briefly covering the fish, smoke, dung, and regret. A baker's apprentice appears carrying an empty flour sack. He asks whether you are strong enough to lift grain. You look at the bakery. For once, the next job smells wonderful. This is almost certainly a trap. 14. The baker's apprentice, working beside the city's most useful fire. This is almost certainly a trap. You enter the bakery anyway. Warm air rolls over you, carrying the smell of fresh bread, wood smoke, flour, and yeast. After fish guts, tanning pits, and boiled animal fat, the bakery feels almost heavenly. Then someone drops a sack of grain onto your shoulder. The sack weighs approximately the same as a stubborn donkey. You stagger backward, knees bending beneath it, while the baker tells you to carry it upstairs. Of course there are stairs. Bread is one of the most important foods in a medieval city. Rich households may buy fine white bread made from carefully sifted wheat flour. Poorer customers eat darker loaves containing coarser wheat, rye, barley, or mixtures shaped by price and availability. Everyone needs bread. This means the bakery begins work long before sunrise and continues until the ovens, workers, or both become physically unreasonable. You climb the narrow steps toward the storage loft. Flour dust hangs in the air. It settles on your hair, your eyelashes, and the fish scales still attached to your sleeve, giving you the appearance of a badly prepared religious statue. At the top, you lower the sack. Your back makes a small clicking sound. Nobody reacts. This apparently happens often. Downstairs, the baker is mixing dough in a large wooden trough. Water, flour, salt, and leaven are worked together by hand. Depending on local practice, yeast-rich material from brewing or a saved piece of fermented dough may help the bread rise. You plunge your hands into the mixture. The dough is cold, sticky, and determined to keep your fingers. You push, fold, stretch, and turn it. The baker watches your technique with the expression of a man observing someone reverse a cart toward his house. He tells you to use your weight. You lean harder. The dough folds beneath your arms. Kneading develops the structure of the bread and distributes the ingredients evenly. It also reveals every injury you have collected during the previous 13 jobs. Your shoulders ache from scraping hides. Your palms sting from lime. Your fingers remain cracked from laundry water. The dough enters every cut. Bread is comforting because customers never experience this stage. Once kneaded, the dough rests beneath cloths while the oven is prepared. The oven is a large masonry chamber heated by burning wood directly inside it. You help feed the fire until flames roll across the interior and the stone absorbs the heat. The bakery becomes hotter, then hotter again. Sweat runs down your face. Flour sticks to it, forming a paste across your forehead. You now appear to be slowly breading yourself. When the oven is hot enough, the burning wood and embers are pulled out with long tools. The floor is swept quickly, and the loaves are placed inside using a wooden peel. There is no temperature display. The baker judges the heat through experience. The color of the oven walls, the behavior of the fire, the speed at which flour browns, and perhaps the degree to which his arm hair disappears near the opening. You shape dough into loaves. Each portion must be measured carefully. In many medieval towns, bread prices and loaf sizes are regulated because grain prices change and dishonest bakers are always tempted to sell smaller loaves for the same money. Authorities may inspect bread and punish bakers who provide underweight or poor quality loaves. The baker reminds you of this while watching you divide the dough. You make one loaf too small. He adds more dough. The next is too large. He removes some. The third resembles a sleeping hedgehog. He looks at you for several seconds before reshaping it himself. The loaves enter the oven. Heat bursts across your face as you lean toward the opening. You slide them onto the hot floor, trying to place them evenly without allowing one to touch another. One loaf sticks to the peel. You jerk the handle. The loaf flies forward, lands sideways, and attaches itself to two others. The baker closes his eyes. You understand that this is prayer. While the bread bakes, more work appears. Flour must be sifted, ash must be cleared, wood must be split and stacked. Mixing troughs must be scraped clean before dried dough becomes part of the furniture. Customers begin arriving before the first batch is ready. A servant wants 12 fine loaves for a wealthy household. An innkeeper wants cheaper bread for stew bowls. A laborer asks for yesterday's bread because it costs less and his teeth have apparently done something to offend him. The bakery fills with noise. People argue over prices, sizes, and waiting times. One customer squeezes a loaf, then complains that other customers have been squeezing the loaves. At last, the oven is opened. The bread comes out golden, brown, and deeply fragrant. Crusts crack softly as the loaves cool. For one beautiful moment, the day feels almost civilized. Then the baker finds the joined cluster you launched earlier. 3 loaves have fused into one enormous shape. He hands it to you and deducts part of its value from your wages. You tear off a warm piece. The inside is soft and steaming. After a day surrounded by things that smell edible but are not, it may be the finest food you have ever tasted. You chew slowly. Then the baker points towards several barrels beside the rear door. The brewer next door needs help moving them. You swallow the last piece of bread and lift the first barrel. It sloshes. Your next job involves ale, steam, and a great deal of cleaning. For once, you may finally receive a drink. You will simply have to carry several hundred liters of it first. 15. The brewer's drudge, carrying the city's liquid breakfast. You will simply have to carry several hundred liters of it first. The brewer's yard is warm, damp, and crowded with barrels. Steam drifts from an open doorway, carrying the sweet smell of malted grain, wood smoke, yeast, and yesterday's ale soaked permanently into the floorboards. Compared with the tannery, it smells delightful. Compared with fresh bread, it smells like someone left breakfast in a bucket until it became argumentative. You roll the first barrel toward the brewhouse. It immediately turns away from the door. Barrels have a remarkable ability to identify the direction you want them to travel and choose another. You push from one side, pull from the other, and try to guide it across uneven stones without allowing it to crush your toes. The brewer watches from the doorway. He suggests using more control. You briefly consider controlling the barrel toward him. Ale is an essential part of medieval urban life. It is consumed in homes, inns, workshops, religious houses, and anywhere people possess grain, water, and enough patience to clean a large wooden vessel. Brewing is often done on a household scale, frequently by women, while larger commercial operations also supply taverns and city customers. Depending on time and place, ale may be flavored with herbs or increasingly with hops, producing drinks of different strengths and keeping qualities. Your job begins with water. Naturally, the brewhouse requires enormous quantities of it. You take 2 wooden buckets to the well, fill them, and carry them back through the yard. The handles cut into your fingers. Water splashes against your knees. By the 5th journey, your arms feel longer. By the 10th, you have developed a personal grievance against liquids. The water is poured into a large vessel and heated over a fire. You feed split wood beneath it while another worker prepares malted grain. Malting begins when grain is allowed to germinate and is then dried, creating enzymes that will later help convert starch into sugars. You do not understand enzymes. You understand that the grain must be lifted. Sacks of malt arrive from storage. You drag one across the floor, untie it, and pour the contents into the mash vessel. Dust rises around your face. Tiny husks cling to the sweat on your neck. The brewer adds hot water. You take up a long wooden paddle and stir. The mash is thick and heavy. Every movement requires both arms and most of your remaining optimism. Grain swirls through the steaming liquid, slowly releasing the sugars needed for fermentation. You push the paddle deeper. It sticks. You pull. Nothing happens. You brace one foot against the vessel and lean backward until the paddle suddenly comes free, sending a wave of hot mash over the rim. It lands across the floor. The brewer looks at the spill, then at you. He says grain costs money. You look toward the water buckets. Apparently, your suffering is complementary. After the mash rests, the sugary liquid known as wort must be separated from the grain. It is drained into another vessel, while the wet grain remains behind. The spent grain is not necessarily wasted. It may be fed to animals or sold for other uses. The pigs near the yard already know this and are pressing their noses between the fence boards like customers waiting for a tavern to open. The wort is boiled. Smoke thickens beneath the roof. Steam rolls across the room, dampening walls and clothing. Herbs or hops may be added, depending on the recipe and local preference. The mixture must be watched carefully. A boiling vat of wort can foam and rise with astonishing speed. You turn away for a moment to move a bucket. When you look back, pale froth is climbing toward the rim. You shout. The brewer rushes forward. Together, you stir and reduce the fire while foam spills down the side with a hiss. The brewer saves most of the batch. then spend several minutes explaining that watching the vat means continuing to look at it. This is useful information. Again, its timing is imperfect. Once boiled, the wort must cool before yeast is added. If it remains too hot, fermentation will fail. If it sits exposed too long, unwanted organisms may spoil it. Nobody knows about microorganisms in the modern sense, but experienced brewers know that cleanliness, temperature, ingredients, and timing determine whether the result becomes ale or an expensive barrel of regret. The cooled liquid is transferred into a fermentation vessel. You lift one side of a heavy tub with another worker. The contents shift suddenly, pulling you forward. Your boots slide across the wet floor. For one terrifying second, the entire batch tilts. You recover. The other worker tells you not to spill it. Everyone in the medieval city has mastered the art of advice delivered after danger appears. Yeast is added, perhaps from a previous successful brew. Over time, fermentation transforms the sweet liquid, producing alcohol and bubbles. You lean over an older vessel. Foam trembles on the surface. The ale is alive with activity, though to you it looks like porridge quietly planning revenge. While fermentation continues, the equipment must be cleaned. The brewer hands you a brush. Barrels, tubs, paddles, and buckets require scrubbing because residue can spoil future batches. You kneel beside an empty cask and reach inside, scraping sour deposits from the wood. Your head and shoulders disappear through the opening. The smell is sharp enough to make your eyes water. From outside, someone strikes the barrel. The sound explodes around your skull. The other workers laugh. Medieval workplace morale has arrived. By late afternoon, finished ale is ready to be delivered. Some is weak and intended for regular consumption. Stronger batches cost more and may be reserved for customers seeking either celebration or temporary relief from medieval dentistry. You are allowed a small cup. The ale is cloudy, fresh, slightly sour, and far less powerful than tavern stories will someday suggest. Still, it is cool, filling, and the first part of your workday that has volunteered to improve your mood. You drink it slowly. Then the brewer points to 6 full barrels awaiting delivery. The inn wants 2, a merchant wants 1, 3 are going upstairs into a guild hall. There are no delivery vans. There is only you and a public porter tightening a leather strap across his shoulders. He asks whether you can carry heavy loads. You look at the barrels. You look at the stairs across the street. You tell him you have carried worse. This is true, although most of it was once inside a privy. 16, the public porter, medieval delivery without wheels on the suitcase. This is true, although most of it was once inside a privy. The porter looks at you for a moment, decides not to ask, and hands you a broad leather carrying strap. You loop it across your shoulders. The first barrel waits beside the brewhouse door, full of ale and shaped with the confidence of an object that knows it cannot be punished. Together, you and the porter tilt it onto a small wooden hand cart. The cart has 1 wheel. The wheel dislikes circles. You push forward. It wobbles immediately. A public porter carries the medieval city on his back. Grain, wine, timber, cloth, fish, tools, furniture, letters, luggage, barrels, and mysterious locked chests all move through streets because men like you lift them and place them somewhere else. There are carts and pack animals, of course, but narrow alleys, crowded markets, steep stairs, and indoor passages eventually defeat wheels. When that happens, somebody calls the porter. Nobody calls him gently. Your first delivery is to an inn 3 streets away. The barrel rolls across the cart every time you hit a rut. You brace it with one hand while steering with the other, moving through a lane already crowded with stalls, pigs, baskets, horses, beggars, apprentices, and citizens who have stopped directly in the center to conduct an urgent conversation about onions. You call for space. Nobody moves. The porter shouts something less polite. People separate just enough for the cart to pass. A woman carrying eggs presses herself against a wall. A child reaches toward the barrel tap. A dog walks in front of the wheel and then appears offended when you nearly run over it. Urban transport is built on cooperation. Very little cooperation is available. At the inn, the owner points toward a cellar entrance. The steps descend sharply into darkness. You look at the barrel. The barrel looks eager. You and the porter wrap ropes around it and lower it one step at a time. The wood scrapes against stone. Ale sloshes inside. Your arms strain as the weight pulls downward. Halfway down, your boot slips. The barrel jumps one step. You shout. The porter tightens the rope, stopping it before it continues into the cellar alone and begins serving customers. The innkeeper leans over the stairwell. He tells you to be careful. You thank him for rescuing the situation with language. Once the barrel is settled, you climb back into the street. The Guildhall delivery is next. The 3 remaining barrels must go upstairs. Naturally, the porter demonstrates how to use the leather strap. You crouch in front of the barrel while he tips it onto your back. The strap runs over your shoulders and around the load, helping support its weight. For one quiet moment, nothing happens. Then you try to stand. Your knees tremble. Your spine compresses. The barrel presses you forward until your face is close enough to the ground to inspect individual pieces of straw. You take one step, then another. The porter tells you to keep moving because stopping makes the load feel heavier. This appears impossible. The barrel already feels like a stone church containing another smaller church. You shuffle across the square. People step aside, partly from courtesy and partly because being struck by a falling ale barrel is considered an embarrassing cause of death. At the Guildhall, the staircase is narrow and turns halfway up. You climb sideways, pressing one shoulder against the wall. The first step creaks. The second step bends. By the 5th, you begin considering whether the guild truly needs ale on the upper floor. Perhaps senior merchants could descend like ordinary thirsty people. The porter climbs behind you, pushing the barrel upward. His assistance is useful but intimate. Together you reach the turn. The barrel does not fit. You rotate. It jams between the wall and railing. Below, a clerk waits with a bundle of documents and the expression of a man whose inconvenience is more important than your survival. He asks how long this will take. You explain that the barrel has become part of the building. After several minutes of pulling, lifting, and quiet blasphemy, it comes free. You reach the upper hall and lower it carefully onto the floor. Your arms continue shaking after the weight is gone. A guild officer inspects the barrel. He complains about a scratch on one iron hoop. You consider rolling it over his foot. Instead, you return downstairs for the next 2. Porters are often paid by the load, journey, weight, or local custom. Some belong to organized groups or hold recognized rights to carry goods in particular markets and ports. Their knowledge is valuable. They know which alleys are blocked, which stairs can support a chest, which merchants delay payment, and which tavern doors are wide enough for a wine cask. They also know pain in extraordinary detail. After the barrels come sacks of grain. Each one is hoisted onto your shoulder from a cart. The coarse fabric scratches your neck while dust leaks through the seams. You carry the sacks into a warehouse, stacking them in rows. Then come rolls of cloth. Then a wooden chest. The merchant who owns it refuses to say what is inside. This means it is either valuable, illegal, or surprisingly boring. You and the porter lift it between you. The chest has iron fittings, no useful handles, and one side that feels much heavier than the other. You carry it through the market while the merchant walks ahead telling you not to drop it. Every few steps he looks backward. This does not reduce the weight. At the destination, he counts your payment twice and removes one coin because the chest touched a doorway. The porter argues. The merchant argues back. You stand nearby holding the chest, which is an excellent position from which to imagine several solutions. Eventually, the coin is restored. By sunset, your shoulders are bruised beneath the strap. Your hands are swollen and your legs feel hollow. You have carried enough food, drink, and merchandise to supply half the neighborhood. None of it belongs to you. Still without porters, markets stop, warehouses empty, ships remain unloaded, and merchants are forced to discover how much their own products weigh. This may be the strongest argument for your profession. As you return the leather strap, the sound of hammering rings from a nearby forge. A blacksmith stands beside the doorway, holding a glowing length of iron with tongs. His assistant has injured his wrist. He needs someone who can swing a hammer. Your shoulders have already stopped functioning. Fortunately, the hammer only weighs as much as a small child. 17, the blacksmith striker, standing where the sparks land. Fortunately, the hammer only weighs as much as a small child. The blacksmith places it in your hands. Your shoulders immediately reconsider every choice that brought you here. Inside the forge, the air is hot, smoky, and loud enough to make the bell tower seem restful. A charcoal fire glows beneath the hood while a pair of bellows breathes into it, turning dull embers bright orange. Iron bars lean against the wall. Horseshoes, nails, hinges, knives, and half-finished tools cover every available surface. The smith points toward the anvil. A strip of iron lies across it, glowing yellow at one end. He grips the metal with long tongs and tells you where to strike. You raise the hammer. The injured assistant watches from a stool, cradling his wrist and looking far too entertained. You swing. The hammer lands beside the iron. The anvil produces a deafening clang. Pain shoots through your hands, up your arms, and into the part of your brain responsible for regret. The smith looks at the mark you have made. There is no mark. He tells you to watch his hammer. Working as a striker requires rhythm and trust. The master smith positions the heated metal and uses a smaller hammer to indicate exactly where the heavier blows should land. You must strike quickly while the iron remains hot, but not so quickly that you crush his fingers. This creates a wonderfully calming situation. The smith taps the iron once. You swing. This time, your hammer lands correctly. Sparks burst across the anvil. Several strike your sleeve. One enters your shoe. Another lands on your forearm and burns a tiny hole in the collection of stains already decorating your skin. You do not stop. The smith taps again. You strike again. Tap. Strike. Tap. Strike. Slowly, the glowing iron begins to flatten. Blacksmiths are essential to medieval urban life. They produce and repair agricultural tools, household fittings, chains, locks, knives, nails, horseshoes, weapons, and the metal parts required by carts, buildings, and workshops. Nearly every other trade depends on something the smith has made. This explains why he is skilled, respected, permanently busy, and shouting at you. The iron cools from yellow to orange, then dark red. The smith returns it to the forge. Your next task is working the bellows. You grip the wooden handles and pump them steadily. Air rushes through the fire. The charcoal brightens and heat presses against your face. You pump faster. Flames climb upward. The smith tells you not that fast. You slow down. The fire dims. He tells you not that slowly. Blacksmithing is apparently the art of doing everything at a speed known only to the blacksmith. When the iron is hot again, he carries it back to the anvil. You resume striking. The hammer grows heavier with every blow. Your hands slide along the handle as sweat works into the wood. Blisters from the street rake and laundry paddle reopen beneath your fingers. The noise is relentless. Iron hits iron. Tools clatter. The fire roars. Outside, horses stamp while waiting to be shod. Customers call through the doorway, each convinced that his broken hinge, cracked axe, or missing cart pin is the greatest emergency since the Norman invasion. A farmer places a damaged sickle on the bench. A carpenter needs nails. A cook wants a knife sharpened. A merchant demands a stronger lock for a chest, containing something he continues refusing to identify. The smith tells everyone to wait. Nobody accepts this. Your glowing strip of iron is becoming a hinge. The smith bends it over the edge of the anvil, then places a punch against the metal. He tells you to strike the punch. You look at the narrow tool. You look at his hand holding it. The distance between the two is not generous. You raise the hammer carefully. The smith tells you not to hesitate. You bring it down. The punch drives into the hot iron. You have missed his fingers. This is your finest achievement today. The hole is opened further, the edges shaped, and the hinge reheated once more. When the smith is satisfied, he plunges it into a water trough. Steam erupts with a violent hiss. You jump backward. The injured assistant laughs. Apparently, every new worker does this, giving the forge one reliable source of entertainment. Now the horseshoe must be fitted. A farrier may specialize in shoeing horses, though many smiths also perform the work. A horse is led inside, lifting each hoof with the enthusiasm of an animal being asked to participate in paperwork. The old shoe is removed. The hoof is trimmed. A newly shaped shoe is held briefly against it to check the fit. Smoke rises from the contact, filling the room with the smell of burned horn. The horse shifts suddenly. You step away from its hind leg. For once, previous employment has taught you something useful. By evening, your ears ring constantly. Your shoulders pulse with pain. Tiny burns cover your arms, and your clothing smells of charcoal and hot metal. But the hinge works. The horseshoe fits. The repaired sickle is sharp again. Your blows have helped shape tools that will build houses, harvest crops, lock doors, and cut tomorrow's bread. The smith places a small iron nail in your palm as payment. It is straight, strong, and possibly the least disappointing object you have touched all day. Then a laborer appears in the doorway, covered from head to foot in white dust. The lime kiln needs more fuel. He says the work is hot but simple. Behind him, a pale cloud drifts through the street. Your lungs watch it approach and quietly begin packing. 18, the lime burner, producing the powder that bites back. Your lungs watch it approach and quietly begin packing. The laborer leads you toward the edge of the city, where the buildings thin out and the air becomes slightly clearer. Then the lime kiln appears. So much for that. It stands beyond a cluster of workshops, a squat stone structure breathing smoke into the gray sky. Heat ripples above its opening. Nearby lie piles of limestone, firewood, ash, broken baskets, and white powder spread across the ground like snow from a deeply hostile winter. The laborer hands you a cloth. You wrap it around your mouth and nose. This creates the comforting illusion that you are protected. Lime is essential to medieval construction. Builders use it to make mortar, plaster, and whitewash. It helps bind stones together, cover walls, seal surfaces, and give important buildings the clean, pale appearance that suggests nobody nearby has been breathing dust for 12 hours. To produce it, Limestone must be heated inside a kiln at an extremely high temperature. Your first job is carrying fuel. You lift a bundle of wood and drag it toward the firing opening. The heat strikes your face before you come close. Inside, flames move through layers of stone and fuel, while the kiln master watches the color of the fire and the behavior of the smoke. There is no digital temperature gauge. There is no warning alarm. There is only a man staring into an inferno and saying, "A little more." You push the wood inside with a long iron tool. Sparks rise around your hands. The blacksmith's forge was hot, but this heat feels different. The forge concentrated itself around a small working fire. The lime kiln seems to have heated the entire landscape out of spite. You step backward, coughing. The kiln master tells you not to breathe the smoke. Excellent. You place breathing lower on your list. The firing must continue for long periods, sometimes through the night, while workers add fuel and maintain the heat. If the kiln burns unevenly, some stone remains undercooked while other pieces become damaged or fused. The process requires skill. Your role requires carrying things until the skilled person stops pointing. When the firing is complete and the kiln has cooled enough to approach, the burned limestone is removed. It has become quicklime, pale, brittle, useful, and extremely reactive. The master breaks apart a lump with a hammer. White dust bursts upward. It enters your eyes despite the cloth. You blink rapidly as tears run down your face. The dust dries the skin and irritates the nose, throat, and lungs. Repeated exposure can be dangerous, though the workshop's medical program consists mainly of turning your head away from the wind. You begin loading the quicklime into baskets. The pieces look harmless. This is misleading. Quicklime reacts with water, producing intense heat as it becomes slaked lime. This reaction is useful, but it can burn skin and eyes. Even dampness from sweat can make handling the material unpleasant. You lift a basket. Dust settles across your forearms. A sharp irritation begins almost immediately. You wipe it away with your sleeve, which spreads it over a larger area. A more experienced worker sees this and pours clean water over your arm, then tells you not to rub. This advice would have been magnificent several moments earlier. The quicklime is carried toward a shallow pit where it will be slaked. Water is added carefully. You stand back. The surface hisses. Steam rises. The pale stones crack, swell, and crumble as heat pours from the reaction. The mixture bubbles like porridge being prepared for a family of demons. You lean closer. The master pulls you backward by the shoulder. Splashes can burn, and the expanding material may spit from the pit. Lime water and wet lime can damage skin just as easily as dry dust irritates it. You decide to admire the process from a historical distance of several feet. Once slaked and matured, the lime can be mixed with sand to make mortar. Plasterers use related mixtures for walls, while whitewash helps brighten surfaces and may improve sanitation in certain settings. The final material looks simple. Pale, clean, almost gentle. This is how construction hides its crimes. A mason arrives with a cart and begins loading barrels of prepared lime. He complains that the mixture is too thin. The kiln master disagrees. They argue over consistency while you stand between them covered in powder, looking like a ghost who died performing manual labor. The mason dips 2 fingers into the mixture. He rubs it thoughtfully. Then he announces that it may be acceptable after all. Apparently, the entire quality control department is located in his fingertips. Your next task is clearing ash from beneath the kiln. You crouch near the base and scrape gray material into a basket. Residual heat radiates from the stone. Smoke catches in your throat. Every movement sends more dust into the air. By now, your hair is white. Your eyebrows are white. Your clothes are white except where sweat has created pale gray rivers through the powder. A child passing on the road stares at you. He asks whether you are very old. You tell him you were young this morning. He believes you. Toward evening, carts begin carrying lime back into the city. It will become walls, floors, plaster, mortar, and whitewashed interiors. Buildings will stand for generations because workers like you fed the kiln, endured the heat, and handled material eager to remove the outer layers of your body. No inscription will mention this. The wall will receive all the praise. As you finish clearing the ash, a roofer arrives to collect a small barrel for repairs. He looks upward at the darkening sky and says a storm is coming. Several roof tiles have slipped from a merchant's house. He needs another pair of hands. You glance at the ladder strapped to his cart. After fire, dust, and chemical burns, fresh air sounds wonderful. Unfortunately, the fresh air is waiting 3 stories above the street. 19. The roofer, repairing houses from the least convenient side. Unfortunately, the fresh air is waiting 3 stories above the street. The roofer leads you back through the city as the sky darkens overhead. Wind pushes between the buildings, carrying smoke, dust, and the first cold drops of rain. Above the street, timber houses lean outward over the lane, their upper floors approaching one another like neighbors sharing a secret. The merchant's house is easy to identify. Several roof tiles are already lying in the road. One has landed inside a vegetable stall. The merchant is arguing that the damaged cabbage should not be included in the repair bill. The roofer places a ladder against the building. It is long, narrow, and made from timber that appears to remember being a young tree. You put 1 foot on the first rung. The ladder creaks. You look upward. The roofer is already climbing with a bundle of replacement tiles tied across his back. He moves quickly, apparently because hesitation allows the mind to become involved. You follow. Medieval roofs vary according to region, wealth, available materials, and local rules. Some buildings use thatch. Others are covered with wooden shingles, stone slabs, lead, or fired clay tiles. Urban authorities may encourage or require less flammable roofing in crowded districts, especially after fires demonstrate that an entire street can disappear before anyone finds a useful bucket. This particular house has tiles. Several hundred of them. Most are currently wet. You climb higher. The street shrinks beneath your feet. People become hats moving between stalls. A horse cart passes below, its driver completely unaware that a falling apprentice may soon become part of his cargo. At the top of the ladder, you grip the roof edge. The roofer reaches down and pulls you onto the slope. Your boot slides immediately. You drop onto your knees and cling to a wooden batten beneath the tiles. Rainwater runs down the roof and into your sleeves. The roofer tells you to relax. You explain that you are relaxed. Your voice has become unusually high. Roofers use ladders, scaffolds, ropes, battens, and experience to move across steep surfaces. Safety depends heavily on careful footing, sound materials, and not making the mistake you are about to make. The roofer points toward the damaged area. Several tiles have slipped or cracked, exposing the wooden structure beneath. Water is already entering through the gap. You crawl toward it. Each tile feels smooth beneath your hands. Moss grows along the edges. The roof slopes toward the street with the quiet certainty of an execution ramp. You keep your weight low. The roofer removes a broken tile and hands it to you. You turn to place it in a basket. Your knee presses against another tile. It cracks. The sound is small. The roofer closes his eyes. You have repaired -1 tiles. He shows you how the overlapping pieces are arranged so rainwater flows downward without entering the joints. Some tiles may hang from pegs or rest against laths. They must be positioned securely, but also replaced without dismantling half the roof. You slide a new tile into place. It does not fit. You turn it around. It still does not fit. The roofer takes it, trims the edge with a tool, and settles it neatly into the gap. He hands you another. You repeat his movements carefully. This one stays. You have now returned the roof to zero. The rain strengthens. Drops strike the tiles around you with a steady tapping sound. Water runs across your face. Your hands grow cold and stiff, making every tool harder to grip. Inside the house, the merchant shouts that water is dripping into his bedroom. The roofer shouts back that this is why you are on the roof. The merchant asks whether you can work faster. You look over the edge. He has returned beneath an awning. Medieval management remains safest at ground level. The roofer lifts part of the damaged covering and inspects the timber beneath. One narrow lath has begun to rot. It must be replaced before it fails and allows more tiles to slide. You hold the loose section while he removes the damaged wood. Wind catches beneath it. The roofing material lifts sharply. You tighten your grip as the piece pulls like a sail. For several seconds, you are no longer repairing a building. You are trying to prevent part of the building from emigrating. Together, you lower it. The roofer nails a new lath into place, using small iron nails made by someone who probably still has ringing ears from yesterday's forge. You hand him each nail. One slips from your fingers. It falls into the street. Below, a man yelps. You do not look down. You decide ignorance is the safest apology. Once the timber is secure, the remaining tiles are replaced. You work your way across the gap, moving slowly while the storm arrives over the rooftops. From this height, you can see smoke rising from hundreds of chimneys and roof openings. Some houses have thatched sections. Others display repaired patches in several colors, each one recording a different season of leaks. Urban roofing is endless work. Rain enters. Wind lifts tiles. Timber decays. Birds nest beneath coverings. Chimney sparks ignite thatch. Residents make unauthorized holes and later claim the hole was always there. Every roof is only temporarily convinced to remain a roof. At last, the final tile is set. The merchant shouts that the dripping has stopped. He says this with the excitement of a man who has personally defeated the weather. You begin crawling back toward the ladder. Then your left foot slips. Your body slides downward. You grab the roof with both hands, but the wet tiles offer little help. For one long moment, the edge approaches beneath you. The roofer catches the back of your belt. You stop. Half your body hangs over the street. Below, the vegetable seller looks up. He moves his cabbages. The roofer pulls you back onto the roof. You lie flat against the tiles, breathing hard while rainwater runs past your ear. Nobody speaks for several seconds. Then the roofer tells you not to do that again. Another excellent piece of professional instruction. You climb down slowly, pressing each boot firmly onto the ladder rungs. When you reach the street, the ground feels luxurious, stable, and deeply underrated. The merchant inspects the work from below. He complains that the new tiles do not match the old ones. The roofer explains that darkness will solve this problem in approximately 10 minutes. You receive your payment and look toward the city wall, where rainwater is pouring into the defensive ditch. Floating in it are branches, broken baskets, animal remains, and enough household rubbish to block a small invasion. A town official is waiting beside the gate with hooks and shovels. He says the ditch must be cleared before the storm makes it overflow. You have survived the roof. Now the ground would like revenge. 20, the city ditch cleaner, defending the walls from garbage. You have survived the roof. Now the ground would like revenge. Rain pours through the city gate as the official leads you toward the defensive ditch. Water streams from the road, carrying mud, straw, dung, broken pottery, and several vegetables that have clearly abandoned their families. The ditch runs beside the wall in a long brown channel. It was originally built to make attacking the city more difficult. A deep ditch forces enemy soldiers to climb downward before reaching the wall, slows siege equipment, and generally turns invasion into a damp administrative problem. Unfortunately, the local residents have discovered another use for it. Rubbish disposal. The water is crowded with dead branches, discarded baskets, ashes, animal bones, spoiled food, broken furniture, and an object that appears to be either a large sack or a very tired pig. The official hands you a hook. He tells you to clear the blockage near the drain. You look at the storm. You look at the ditch. You look at the hook, which is approximately 3 feet shorter than your sense of self-preservation requires. Rainwater must escape the city somehow. Streets and gutters direct part of it downhill, but drains and ditches easily become blocked by refuse. When that happens, water backs up into roads, yards, cellars, workshops, and homes. The medieval drainage system is simple. Water travels downhill until garbage disagrees. You step carefully down the muddy bank. Your boot slides. You drop onto one knee, plunging your leg into water up to the thigh. The cold reaches you instantly, along with a texture that suggests the ditch contains more than water. The official calls down to ask whether you are all right. You tell him yes. This is easier than describing what has entered your shoe. You wade toward the blockage. The current presses against your legs while rain strikes the surface around you. Leaves and straw have formed a thick mat across a narrow outlet beneath the wall. Mixed through it are scraps of cloth, bones, clay fragments, and several months of civic denial. You push the hook into the mass. Nothing moves. You pull harder. A bundle of rotting reeds breaks free and floats toward you. Beneath it is a dead dog. You stop. The dog does not. It drifts slowly against your knees. You guide it aside with the hook, trying to preserve what remains of your emotional stability. Dead animals are a regular urban problem. Horses, dogs, cats, pigs, and livestock may be dumped in rivers, pits, streets, or ditches despite rules forbidding it. Authorities repeatedly order residents to remove waste because residents repeatedly discover that orders are lighter than carcasses. You stab the hook into the blockage again. This time, part of it shifts. Dark water begins squeezing through the gap. You pull at a broken basket, then a length of cloth, then the wooden side of what may once have been a chair. Each piece is heavy with water and coated in black mud. Another laborer waits on the bank with a shovel. You throw the debris upward. Most of it lands beside him. One piece lands on him. He looks down at the dripping cabbage leaf stuck to his chest. Neither of you comments. The rain continues. Your hands become numb around the hook. Water soaks your clothes beneath the borrowed cloak. Every movement releases bubbles from the mud below, each one carrying a smell from deep inside the earth. You cannot see where you are stepping. This becomes concerning when something curls around your ankle. You freeze. It tightens. You reach into the water and pull free, a length of rope attached to a cracked wooden bucket. For one beautiful moment, you are relieved. Then the bucket turns over, releasing several rats. They swim away with astonishing skill. Apparently, even the vermin have received better training. You drag the bucket onto the bank and return to the outlet. The remaining blockage has compressed into a dense wall. You push the hook beneath it and lean backward with your full weight. The mass suddenly breaks. Water explodes through the drain. The current catches your legs and pulls you sideways. You fall against the bank, grabbing at roots while a wave of rubbish rushes past. Branches, bones, straw, and one deeply surprised rat disappear through the opening. The official cheers. You remain pressed against the mud, reconsidering whether this counts as success. Slowly, the water level begins to fall. The ditch drains more freely, carrying the storm runoff away from the gate and lowering the risk of flooding nearby buildings. For the first time, you can see the ditch bottom. This was a mistake. The mud contains pottery, shoes, butcher's waste, corroded metal, and enough bones to support several worrying theories. Some are animal bones. You choose to believe all of them are animal bones. You climb back toward the road. The bank collapses beneath 1 foot, sending you forward on your hands. The laborer grabs your arm and pulls you onto firmer ground. You lie there for a moment, while rain washes a small portion of the ditch from your clothing. The official inspects the flowing drain. He says the city has been saved from flooding. Then he complains that you left rubbish beside the gate. You point out that the rubbish came from the city ditch. He explains that it cannot remain there. So you spend another hour loading it into a cart. By the time you finish, darkness is gathering beneath the clouds. Your clothes are soaked. Your feet are numb. Your hands smell like stagnant water despite having spent most of the day in fresh rain. Still, the ditch is flowing. The gate remains passable. The nearby houses will probably not wake with dead rats floating through their kitchens. Nobody will know how close they came. As the cart rolls away, bells sound from a charitable hospital near the wall. A servant hurries into the road carrying stained bedding. Several patients have arrived soaked by the storm. The hospital needs help changing the straw. After spending hours surrounded by dead animals and urban waste, caring for sick people sounds almost gentle. Then someone inside begins coughing. 21, the hospital servant, caring without knowing what is coming. Then someone inside begins coughing. It is not a delicate cough. It is the deep, rattling kind that seems to begin somewhere near the patient's boots and climb upward through every organ before escaping into the room. You pause at the hospital door. The servant carrying the bedding tells you not to worry. This is rarely said by people standing outside safe buildings. You enter. The hospital is attached to a religious house near the city wall. It is not a hospital in the modern sense, filled with machines, laboratories, private rooms, and vending machines selling sandwiches at morally questionable prices. It is closer to a large hall offering shelter, food, prayer, basic nursing, and whatever practical care the staff can provide. Rows of beds line the walls. Some are wooden frames. Others are pallets stuffed with straw. Several patients share the same space, breathing the same smoky air beneath a roof darkened by years of candles and fires. The room smells of damp wool, boiled herbs, sweat, old straw, smoke, urine, and wounds hidden beneath bandages. After the city ditch, this almost feels familiar. Hospitals may care for poor travelers, elderly people, pilgrims, abandoned children, and those too sick to support themselves. Some specialize in particular groups or illnesses. Religious communities often play an important role, providing food, shelter, spiritual comfort, and nursing. Their medical knowledge is limited by the age. Their willingness to help is not. A brother points toward an empty bed. The previous patient has died. You are told to remove the bedding. The straw mattress is damp and stained. You lift one corner, and several insects move rapidly toward the safer side. You lower it again. The brother tells you it must be burned or replaced. You carry it into the yard, holding it away from your body as though it has personally threatened your family. Fleas jump from the seams. Lice cling to the cloth. The straw contains crumbs, dried herbs, hair, and several objects you do not pause to identify. Fresh bedding is valuable. Clean bedding is temporary. You bring in a new bundle of straw and spread it across the wooden frame. A linen sheet is placed over the top. It is not perfectly white, but after your recent work in the laundry yard, you understand the effort represented by not visibly brown. A patient is brought through the doorway. He is a traveler found near the gate, soaked with rain and shaking violently. His face is pale. His lips are blue. His clothing clings to his body, heavy with water and mud. You help remove his cloak. The wet wool weighs almost as much as he does. The brother examines him, touching his forehead and asking questions. The man answers weakly. He has been coughing for days and has eaten very little. You do not know whether he has a fever, an infection, exhaustion, or some combination eager to become fatal. There are no blood tests. There is no chest scan. There is only observation, experience, and the uncomfortable awareness that the patient's breath is reaching your face. You give him warm broth. It contains grain, onions, herbs, and a small amount of meat. Nutrition, warmth, rest, and fluids can help many sick people, even when the caregivers do not understand the exact cause of the illness. The traveler drinks slowly. Half the broth spills onto the sheet you just placed. You replace it without complaint. This is care. Across the hall, an elderly woman calls for water. You fill a cup and bring it to her bedside. Her hands shake too badly to hold it, so you support her head while she drinks. She thanks you. It is the first direct gratitude you have received all day. Naturally, she then vomits onto your sleeve. You remain calm. You have been trained by fishmongers. The floor must be cleaned. Chamber pots must be emptied. Dressings must be washed or replaced. Fires must be fed so the hall stays warm, but smoke must somehow be prevented from filling the room completely. This final objective is more of a philosophical ambition. You carry a basin toward a man with an infected leg wound. The skin around it is swollen and red. A surgeon has cleaned it, but the bandage is already soaked. You hold the lamp while a brother removes the cloth. The smell is sweet and rotten. The patient grips the bed frame. There may be honey, wine, herbal preparations, ointments, or other treatments available depending on the hospital and practitioner. Some remedies offer real benefits. Others are based on medical theories involving humors, astrology, or the sincere belief that the human body behaves like an argumentative soup. The wound is washed. The man cries out. You hold his shoulders. There is little else you can do. As evening deepens, prayers are spoken in the hall. Some patients join softly. Others sleep. A few stare at the ceiling with the exhausted stillness of people who know they may not leave. You move between them carrying water, blankets, bowls, and clean cloth. The work is frightening because you do not know which illnesses spread or how. People may blame bad air, bodily imbalance, divine punishment, or invisible corruption. You only know that sometimes one patient coughs, and 3 days later, another bed is occupied. Still, you do not leave. You warm cold hands. You lift cups. You clean faces. You listen to confused stories told by people far from home. Medieval medicine cannot cure everything, but compassion does not require a complete understanding of bacteria. Near midnight, the traveler's shaking begins to ease. He falls asleep beneath 2 blankets, breathing more steadily than before. Perhaps he will recover. Perhaps warmth, food, and rest were what he needed. Perhaps tomorrow will bring worse news. For tonight he is alive. You step into the corridor and lean against the wall, exhausted. Your sleeve is stained, your back aches, and you have become deeply aware of every cough in the building. Then a man in a blood-spotted apron walks through the door carrying a leather case of razors, probes, cups and iron instruments. The barber surgeon has arrived. He looks around the hall and asks whether anyone has a strong stomach. For reasons nobody can explain, everyone points at you. 22. The barber surgeon's apprentice. Haircut, tooth removal, and minor terror. For reasons nobody can explain, everyone points at you. The barber surgeon studies your stained clothing, burned sleeves, lime-covered boots, and expression of quiet spiritual collapse. He nods. Apparently, this is what medical experience looks like. You follow him into a smaller room beside the hospital hall. A wooden chair stands near the center. Shelves hold jars, bandages, razors, bowls, cups, needles, probes, and several iron tools shaped specifically to make patients reconsider honesty. The room smells of vinegar, old blood, lamp smoke, herbs, and fear. Mostly fear. Barber surgeons perform a range of practical procedures. Depending on place, period, training, and local rules, they may cut hair, shave beards, pull teeth, treat wounds, set simple injuries, perform bloodletting, lance swellings, and assist with operations. Physicians generally occupy a more learned and prestigious position, discussing diagnosis, humors, diet, and theory. The barber surgeon occupies the position beside the screaming person. Your master opens his leather case. He tells you to clean the instruments. You stare at the collection. There is no sealed package marked sterile. There is no machine humming in the corner. You wipe the blades, wash them with hot water or wine, and lay them on a cloth. Some practitioners value cleanliness and wash wounds carefully, though nobody yet understands microbes in the modern scientific sense. An instrument can look clean while still carrying enough invisible life to establish its own village. The first patient enters holding his jaw. One side of his face is swollen. He has not slept for 2 nights, and the offending tooth has reached the stage where he would willingly allow removal by a blacksmith using a door hinge. The surgeon sits him in the chair. You stand behind it. The patient asks whether this will hurt. The surgeon says it will be quick. Notice that he has answered a different question. The patient opens his mouth. Inside, several teeth are dark, broken, or missing. Medieval diets can contain coarse particles from grinding stones, while limited dental care allows decay, infection, and gum disease to progress. Tooth cleaning exists in various forms, but regular professional dentistry is not waiting conveniently beside the market. The surgeon selects an extraction tool. You grip the patient's shoulders. The tool closes around the tooth. The surgeon twists. The patient rises halfway from the chair, taking you with him. You push downward. He kicks a stool across the room. The surgeon pulls again. There is a wet crack. The tooth comes free. For a moment, everyone stares at it. The patient spits blood into a basin and looks amazed that the pain causing him misery is now sitting in another man's hand. He will still face the risk of bleeding or infection, but the diseased tooth is gone. The surgeon tells him to rinse his mouth. He pays, leaves, and walks into the hospital corridor with the expression of someone who has survived a private war. You begin cleaning the chair. The next patient is already waiting. This one needs bloodletting. Medical theory often explains illness through an imbalance of the 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Removing blood may be recommended for certain conditions, though the practice can weaken patients and is not a cure for most illnesses. The patient appears tired. You consider whether removing part of his blood will improve this. Nobody asks you. The surgeon ties a band around the man's arm, identifies a vein, and makes a small cut with a lancet. Dark blood flows into a bowl. You hold the bowl. The patient watches it fill. His face grows pale. He asks whether enough has been removed. The surgeon says nearly. The patient slides sideways in the chair. You catch him before he reaches the floor. Once he is conscious again, he is advised to rest. This feels like returning a borrowed horse after removing one of its legs and recommending less travel. Then comes a workshop apprentice with a deep cut across his palm. A blade slipped while he was carving wood. The wound is dirty and bleeding has soaked through the cloth wrapped around it. You wash the hand. The apprentice hisses through his teeth. The surgeon examines the cut, removes a splinter, and closes the wound with stitches. You hold the lamp close while trying not to tremble. The needle passes through skin. The apprentice looks away. You do not have that luxury. Pain relief may involve alcohol, herbal preparations, cooling, compression, or substances with sedating properties, but reliable anesthesia is not available. Many procedures depend on speed, restraint, and the patient's ability to endure a situation that future centuries will describe as outpatient care. The surgeon ties the final stitch. The apprentice exhales. You bandage the hand, wrapping the cloth firmly but not so tightly that circulation stops. The surgeon warns him to keep the wound clean. The apprentice works in a carpentry shop full of sawdust, dirt, and sharp tools. This advice has excellent theoretical value. The final patient arrives after dark. He has a swollen lump beneath his arm that has become hot and painful. The surgeon decides it must be opened and drained. You prepare cloths and a basin. The patient lies back. You hold his arm. The blade enters the swelling. The contents emerge with enough force to make the fish market seem emotionally restrained. You keep holding the basin. This is personal growth. When the wound is cleaned and dressed, the patient is helped to bed. Whether he recovers will depend on the cause, the treatment, his general health, and factors nobody in the room can see. By the end of the night, your hands smell of vinegar and blood. Your stomach has survived, though it has filed several complaints. You have watched pain relieved, pain created, and sometimes both in the same movement. The barber surgeon closes his case. He tells you that you did well. This is the second compliment you have received today, and the first that did not come from a dying woman. Outside, the church bell tolls slowly. A hospital servant carries a covered body toward the courtyard. The gravedigger has been sent for. He needs help before the ground freezes harder. You look at the shovel waiting beside the door. At least the next customer will not move. 23. The gravedigger, making room beneath the sitting. At least the next customer will not move. The body is wrapped in a linen shroud and carried through the hospital courtyard on a wooden board. Rain has stopped, but the ground remains wet and cold. Water drips from the roof edges. Somewhere beyond the wall, a dog barks at nothing with great professional commitment. The gravedigger is waiting beside the churchyard gate. He hands you a spade. It is the third shovel you have been given today, which suggests medieval society has identified your natural talents. You follow him among the graves. The churchyard is crowded. Stone markers stand beside simple wooden crosses. While many poorer burials have no lasting marker at all, the ground rises unevenly beneath your feet, shaped by generations of digging, filling, settling, and digging again. In a busy medieval city, burial space near churches can become limited. Wealthy people may pay for prestigious places inside or close to the church. Ordinary residents are buried farther out, wherever space can be found. The dead remain concerned with social status. They are simply quieter about it. The gravedigger chooses a patch near the wall and marks a narrow rectangle with the edge of his spade. You begin digging. The wet soil is heavy. Each shovelful clings to the blade and must be shaken loose. Mud gathers around your boots. The cold enters your hands through the wooden shaft, stiffening your fingers until gripping the tool feels like holding a frozen branch. You push down with your foot. The spade sinks several inches. You lift. The earth lands beside the grave with a soft thud. Again and again. At first, the work feels almost peaceful. The churchyard is quieter than the market, forge, brewery, or hospital. No customers are complaining. No animals are kicking. Nothing is boiling. Then your spade strikes something hard. A dull knock travels up the handle. You stop. The gravedigger looks over. You scrape away the surrounding soil and uncover a piece of old bone. It appears to be part of an arm. You stare at it. The gravedigger does not. Churchyards are used repeatedly over long periods. Older burials may be disturbed when new graves are opened, especially where space is scarce. Bones can be gathered carefully and reburied elsewhere, sometimes in an ossuary or charnel house. The gravedigger lifts the bone and places it gently beside several others. He tells you to continue. You do. A few minutes later, you find part of a skull. It emerges from the soil facing upward, wearing the calm expression of someone whose final appointment has been unexpectedly rescheduled. You lift it carefully. Soil falls from one eye socket. You apologize. This is unnecessary but polite. The grave deepens slowly. You climb down into it and pass soil upward while the gravedigger clears the edges. The walls are damp and close around you. From below ground level, the churchyard looks different. You can see boots moving past. You can hear the bell above. You become aware that you are standing exactly where the next person will remain for considerably longer than your shift. You dig faster. The wrapped body waits beneath a small shelter. A priest speaks quietly with the hospital brother. No family has arrived. Perhaps the dead man was a traveler. Perhaps his relatives live far away. Perhaps nobody knew his name well enough to send word. Medieval death is common, but it is not casual. Families mourn children, spouses, friends, neighbors, and parents just as deeply as people do now. Familiarity with death does not make loss painless. It only means grief arrives more often and receives less privacy. When the grave is deep enough, you climb out. The body is carried forward. You and the gravedigger lower it using ropes beneath the board. The shroud sags slightly as the weight descends. One rope slips through your cold fingers. The body tilts. You grab the line before it rolls against the grave wall. The priest pauses. Everyone looks at you. You tighten your grip and lower it properly. Even the dead are capable of producing workplace pressure. The body settles at the bottom. The priest says the prayers. His voice is soft in the cold air. For a few moments, the city's noise fades behind the wall. The man had little. No carved tomb. No expensive coffin. No procession of important mourners. But he is named before God, blessed, and placed into the earth with care. Then you begin filling the grave. The first soil strikes the shroud with a sound you were not expecting. Soft. Final. You keep working. The mound rises as the grave disappears. Because disturbed soil takes up more space, some remains piled above ground and will settle over time. The gravedigger shapes it neatly with the back of his spade. He places a simple wooden marker at the head. That is all. Nearby, another funeral arrives. This one includes a merchant's family, several mourners, candles, and a coffin. Wealth changes the ceremony, the location, and the number of people watching. It does not change the destination. The gravedigger leads you toward a second prepared space. You ask whether this is the final burial tonight. He looks toward the hospital. Another bell begins tolling. During ordinary weeks, the work is steady. During epidemics, famine, or war, it becomes overwhelming. Graves are opened faster, ceremonies grow shorter, workers struggle to keep pace with death. Tonight is not such a night, but the memory of them lives in the gravedigger's silence. By the time the second burial is complete, darkness has settled over the churchyard. Your back burns, mud covers your legs, soil has worked beneath your fingernails beside the blood, flour, dye, lime, and whatever the ditch contributed. You lean on the spade. The gravedigger thanks you. He hands you a small coin and a piece of bread wrapped in cloth. For once, the payment feels generous. As you leave the churchyard, torchlight flickers near the city gate. A wooden platform stands beyond the wall, watched by two guards. A man in a dark hood is checking a rope beneath the beam. The executioner needs an assistant before morning. You look back at the graves. The next job reaches the same destination. It simply attracts a larger audience. 24, the executioner's assistant, the job nobody discusses at dinner. The next job reaches the same destination. It simply attracts a larger audience. You follow the guards beyond the gate, where a wooden platform stands beneath a heavy crossbeam. Torches flicker in the damp air. The ground around it has been trampled into mud by officials, workers, and curious citizens arriving early to secure an excellent view of somebody else's worst morning. The executioner waits beneath the beam. He is not wearing a dramatic black hood. That image belongs more comfortably to later stories, theater, and people designing unusually depressing costumes. Instead, he looks like an ordinary tradesman in a dark coat, carrying ropes and tools. This somehow makes the situation worse. He hands you a coil of rope. You inspect it carefully. The rope is thick, stiff, and rough with use. Your first task is to check it for fraying, weak fibers, or damage. A failed rope does not cancel an execution. It merely turns a controlled punishment into a public disaster with paperwork. You run it through your hands. The executioner watches. He tells you that the knot must hold securely. Another excellent reminder delivered while you are touching evidence. Executioners perform sentences ordered by courts or authorities. Their duties can include hanging, beheading, whipping, branding, mutilation, displaying bodies, and other punishments that medieval governments used to enforce law and demonstrate power. The work requires skill. A badly performed execution causes unnecessary suffering, enjares the crowd, embarrasses officials, and can damage the executioner's reputation. This is one of history's stranger performance reviews. You climb onto the platform. The boards creak beneath your boots. You inspect the trap mechanism, although not every medieval hanging uses a trapdoor. Some condemned prisoners are raised or pushed from ladders, carts, stools, or platforms. The long drop calculations associated with later executions have not yet arrived. Death may come slowly. You try not to imagine that. Instead, you test the railing, sweep rainwater from the boards, and position a small stool beneath the beam. The executioner secures the rope overhead while a guard checks the route from the prison. Everything must be prepared before the crowd gathers. Naturally, the crowd is already gathering. People approach from the city carrying bread, cups, children, and the relaxed attitude of neighbors attending a market fair. Public punishment is meant to be seen. It warns others, displays official authority, and transforms one person's sentence into a lesson for everyone standing nearby. A pie seller opens a basket. You stare at him. He asks whether you would like one before prices rise. Humanity has adapted to every occasion. The executioner's position in society is complicated. In some places, people fear or avoid him and his family. He may live near the edge of town, struggle to join ordinary social life, or perform other unpleasant duties such as removing carcasses, cleaning refuse, or supervising certain prisoners. Elsewhere, the social reality may be less dramatic. But admiration is rarely included in the wages. People want punishments performed. They simply prefer the person performing them not stand too close during dinner. The executioner checks the knot once more. Then the prison bell sounds. The crowd quiets. A condemned man is led through the gate between two guards. His hands are bound. A priest walks beside him, speaking softly. The man's face is pale, and his eyes move across the crowd as though searching for one familiar person among hundreds of strangers. You suddenly wish you were back in the cesspit. Filth is easier when it does not look at you. The officials read the sentence aloud. The crime is named. The authority of the court is repeated. Every word is meant to make the event appear orderly, lawful, and inevitable. The condemned man climbs the steps. His legs shake. You are told to hold his arm. For one moment, his hand grips your sleeve. He is not a symbol now. He is simply a frightened human being standing on wet boards before sunrise. The priest finishes the prayer. The executioner places the rope. You step backward. The crowd becomes completely silent. Then the stool is removed. You look away. The rope tightens above you. There is movement, the creak of timber, and a murmur from the crowd. The executioner remains close, watching carefully. Depending on the method and circumstances, death may not be immediate. This is not entertainment from where you are standing. Afterward, officials confirm that the sentence has been completed. The crowd begins talking again almost instantly. Some discuss the crime. Others criticize the procedure. One man claims the executioner tied the knot incorrectly, despite having spent the entire morning eating a pie 30 feet away. People slowly return toward the gate. The condemned man remains. Your work does not end when the audience leaves. You help remove the body when authorities permit it. Depending on the sentence, it may be released for burial, buried without ceremony, displayed publicly, or treated according to local law and custom. You lift carefully. The body is heavier than expected. The executioner says nothing. Together, you place it on a waiting board and cover it with cloth. The same churchyard you left earlier may eventually receive it, though perhaps in less honored ground. You begin cleaning the platform. Mud, candle wax, rope fibers, and footprints cover the boards. The spectacle has ended, and once again history requires someone with a bucket. The executioner pays you quietly. He does not offer congratulations. You are grateful. As evening settles, you walk back through the city gate. People recognize where you have been and move slightly aside. A tavern keeper watches you approach, then turns the sign to show that his establishment is suddenly closed. The executioner was right. The punishment belongs to society. The loneliness belongs to the worker. Night has now covered the streets. Shops are shutting, doors are being barred, and candles flicker behind wooden shutters. A watchman approaches carrying a lantern, a staff, and a horn. His partner has fallen asleep while on duty. He asks whether you can stay awake until dawn. After everything you have seen today, sleep no longer seems especially likely. 25 after dark, the night watchman who guards a sleeping fire trap. After everything you have seen today, sleep no longer seems especially likely. The watchman hands you a wooden staff and a small lantern. Its candle produces just enough light to reveal the mud directly in front of your boots, while leaving every doorway beyond it perfectly prepared to contain a murderer. You begin walking. The city feels different after dark. Market stalls are shuttered. Workshop fires have faded. Upper windows glow weakly behind stretched cloth, horn panes, or wooden shutters. Somewhere inside the houses, families settle onto beds, benches, pallets, and straw mattresses after another day of surviving employment. The streets, however, do not become peaceful. They become mysterious. Every alley contains movement. Every roof makes a sound. Every pile of rubbish appears to be breathing. Your first duty is to call the hour. Mechanical clocks exist in some medieval towns, but most ordinary citizens do not possess private timepieces. Bells, daylight, meal routines, church services, and public announcements structure the day. At night, the watchman walks through the streets calling that all is well. This is especially important when almost nothing is well. You take a breath. All is well, you shout. A chamber pot empties from an upper window and strikes the street beside you. You continue walking. Historical accuracy has immediately challenged your statement. Night watches vary greatly between towns. Some rely on appointed citizens taking turns. Others employ dedicated watchmen, gatekeepers, or guards. Their responsibilities may include patrolling streets, checking gates, challenging strangers, preventing theft, enforcing curfews, and raising the alarm during emergencies. The watchman beside you stops near a doorway. It is slightly open. He pushes it with his staff. A cat bursts into the lane. You raise your weapon and nearly strike him. The cat disappears beneath a cart, taking the last fragments of your dignity with it. The watchman tells you to remain calm. You explain that you are calm. Once again, your voice has become strangely high. You continue toward the city gate. It has been closed and secured for the night, controlling movement in and out of the walls. A gatekeeper sits inside the guardroom beside a small fire, wrapped in a cloak. He claims he is awake. His snoring suggests a complicated definition. You inspect the bars, hinges, and locks. Gates protect the city from thieves, enemies, escaped animals, and travelers who arrive after closing and believe shouting makes them punctual. Someone pounds on the outer door. A merchant has returned late with a cart. He demands entry. The gatekeeper asks why he missed the closing bell. The merchant says the road was muddy. This is probably true, because every road you have seen today is at least partly liquid. The guards refuse to open the gate without authorization. The merchant protests, threatens to complain, and announces several important names. None of the important names are currently outside in the rain. You leave him arguing with the wood. Farther into the city, the watchman suddenly raises one hand. You stop. A scraping noise comes from behind a shuttered shop. Then a quiet metallic click. You approach slowly with the lantern held forward. Two figures are crouched near the door. One runs immediately. The other stands and claims he was examining the lock for weaknesses. This is thoughtful community service. The watchman grabs him by the sleeve. You block the lane with your staff, trying to look experienced rather than deeply surprised that the staff has finally become relevant. The suspected thief struggles. For several seconds, the three of you stumble through the mud in a badly organized dance. He slips, pulling the watchman down with him. You catch the man's other arm before he escapes. Together, you drag him toward the guard post. He insists he is innocent. The metal tool hidden inside his sleeve refuses to support this argument. Once he is handed to the gate guards, your patrol continues. You call the hour again. All is well. A drunk man answers from beneath a bench that nothing has been well since his second marriage. You cannot solve this. You move on. The greatest danger is not theft. It is fire. Medieval cities contain closely packed timber buildings, wooden floors, roofs made from combustible materials, workshops filled with fuel, and homes heated or illuminated by open flame. Ovens, hearths, candles, lamps, furnaces, and sparks remain necessary parts of daily life. One careless ember can destroy an entire street. You smell smoke. At first, this means nothing. The whole city smells of smoke. Then you see an orange flicker beneath a workshop door. The watchman runs. You follow, sounding the horn. The blast tears through the sleeping lane. Shutters open overhead. People shout questions. The watchman strikes the door with his staff until the owner appears wearing a nightshirt and one boot. Inside, a basket of wood shaving has begun burning beside an imperfectly extinguished brazier. The flames are small. They are also beside a wooden wall. Buckets arrive from nearby houses. Water is passed hand to hand from a well and thrown across the fire. Someone brings a blanket. Another person brings advice. The advice is not flammable, but it is otherwise useless. Smoke fills the workshop. You drag the burning basket into the street while sparks scatter around your boots. Water strikes it from 3 directions. The flames hiss, collapse, and finally disappear beneath a black steaming heap. The neighboring buildings remain standing. The owner thanks the watch. Then he complains that the water has damaged his floor. You stare at him through the smoke. He quietly stops talking. The residents return indoors. Doors close. The city settles once more. You resume your patrol with wet clothing, aching legs, and a lantern that now seems insultingly small. Hours pass. You wake sleeping guards, chase pigs from a doorway, interrupt a tavern argument, and investigate 6 suspicious noises. 4 are cats. 1 is a rat. The last is an elderly man searching for the privy without his trousers. Near dawn, the sky turns gray above the rooftops. Cooking fires begin to glow. Bakers reopen their ovens. Stable doors creak. Somewhere, a horse starts kicking a wall for reasons known only to the horse. The watchman lowers his lantern. Your shift is ending. Then from high inside the church tower, a bell begins to move. The first strike rolls across the city. It enters your chest, your teeth, and every exhausted bone in your body. People wake behind shuttered windows. The streets begin filling again. The privies are full. The gutters are blocked. The horses have been productive. And somewhere at the foot of the tower, a man is waiting with a bucket. Congratulations. You have survived 1 complete working day inside a medieval city. The city has prepared another.